Hello, everyone. Welcome to Frame Trap. We're shooting this pre-4th of July, so hopefully you guys all had a great weekend and got out there and celebrated. On this holiday episode, I'm joined by Brandon Jones.
Hello.
And Daniel Bloodworth.
Yo.
I'm your host, Ben Moore, and I always love holiday episodes of Frame Trap because, like, the beginning banter question is always taken care of for me. Do you have any big 4th of July plans? What are you doing?
I got no clue.
You've got
no clue.
So it's not that you don't have plans, it's that you don't know what you will be doing, but you will be doing something?
I have no plans.
Okay.
I could make plans in the next day and a half, but I have no plans currently.
Sometimes that's kind of nice, though. Like, I don't know, maybe this is not true for everybody, but the older I get, the more I, like, cherish being like, I'm not doing anything on that day.
Not having plans?
Yes, not
when
having plans.
When you're not sure what the next day brings and you check the calendar and it's nothing,
yes.
You're just like, who gave that to me? Some other force other than myself gifted me that day.
I think I'm at a point in my life where not having plans is better than having plans. Yeah. Brandon, what about you? You got anything going on?
I'm going to go hang out with my parents. My brother's going to be there.
Nice.
And some family friends. And also, having plans, provided for me, having the schedule provided for me. My 2-year-old is basically going to be everybody's plan. We're just going to, like, watch that kid run around.
Yeah.
That'll be our entertainment for the day.
Brandon, I don't hang out with you and your family, but I feel like I've been around you long enough where you'll be like, oh, I'm going to have, like, dinner with my parents or, like, just hanging out with the family. It seems like you're really close with your family, which is always a nice thing. Doesn't happen to everybody.
I've always had, I never left the nest. I can, drive to where I went to high school, in a very short amount of time. So yeah, it's always been nice. And my brother too. Like, we went to school abroad, but it's nice that, like, we're all still around. Nice.
Yeah, I'm actually seeing my family for the first time in, like, a year and a half, and it's like, my sister is, like, 18 years younger than me, and so it's like, wow, she's into like skateboarding and Marvel now, and it's just, like, way different. I'm pretty sure, like, the last time she was into, like, I don't know, like, some, like, Barbies and stuff. So it's just a totally different world. But speaking of, like, 4th of July plans, I think the best game to start off with here, really a 4th of July game in a way, is Mario Golf.
Yeah.
Yeah?
It's time. It's hot. It's time to hit the links.
Yeah, so Brandon, I'm going to kick off things with you because you're reviewing Mario Golf. I have also played some Mario Golf, and then Blood, you've played some Mario Golf, at least on the group stream. Maybe you've played more than that.
Yeah, just the group stream.
I'm not sure, but we had quite a lot of fun in the group stream. How has that either complemented or been different from your review process, Brandon?
I'm coming down after the experience. Like, reality is setting in. The group stream is actually really good. Every now and then Huber, some developer crosses some line with Huber, and Huber gets really sour. Like, he's usually really, really positive on stuff, but every now and then he's just like, I can't stand the lack of content. And Damiani talked about that a lot too. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if they have gone. I think one of the big things that a lot of the allies probably haven't done is the adventure mode, which is almost the first thing I did. Mm-hmm. I took it camping, and my Joy-Cons went goofy, and I've, like, fixed it, but then it broke. Then I fixed it, but then it broke. But that was kind of stressful. But right when I got home from camping, dove into the campaign, and that took about a day and a half. And I was like, okay, there's enough there that's not in the other things that, like, I can definitely spend, like, a week with this game and still, be very entertained. Still feel like I'm checking out new stuff and getting better. But at the same time, comparatively to other sports games that have happened, I didn't play soccer. I'm trying to think, like, what were the other extreme Mario games on the Switch specifically?
Mario Tennis Aces, which I didn't put any time into either. Yeah.
I put a little bit of time into that for some reason. I don't know if that was a group stream or.
I'm guessing I'm revealing my hand here a little bit, but I also think Mario Tennis Aces was pretty disappointing. Like, in a weird way, where, like, I played Mario Tennis Aces. I think I might have played all of the campaign, but it was like something I played and then immediately forgot, and it just didn't hit me the same way that the original Mario Tennis did on, like, N64, and I don't know if it was just a different time or if these games haven't evolved that much or what it is. But yeah, it's funny because I really was excited to play Mario Golf with my wife, and I was like, oh, this is something nice and fun and simple that we can enjoy together. And we did, like, one course, And I was like, yeah, I'm good. Like, it just felt so basic, and it was fine. You know, there is I think an inherent joy to Mario Golf, and I got a more well-rounded experience on the group stream, and I really like Battle Golf, for instance. But just like visually and in terms of content, it's like it's one of those games where you boot it up and you're like, I have definitely played this before. I don't know.
I wonder when games like this get established if this was all they were able to create in the amount of time that, you know, before, from the day they started development to when Nintendo said that this game is coming out, or if Nintendo kind of said ahead of time, we want it to be yay big. Like, we want to have all the rest of this stuff be DLC, and we don't want the game to be, you know, much bigger than that, as in the case of Aces as well. Like, I wonder if that's a directive, because it's hard, like so many things with the Nintendo, it's hard to like say they're doing it wrong, because I'm sure this game's going to sell very well. And the other thing that I want to get to in a second, but I do want to talk about lack of content. I'm having so much fun. It's my favorite sports franchise that Mario does.
Sure.
Even more than like kart, you know, because I always get destroyed at kart. I have a lot of fun playing it, but it's the one I'm like good at, you know. It's and it's just so chill, and it's like super goofy now, which puts a smile on my face. But undeniably, there's not a lot going on. You can get through it very quick.
Yeah, I don't know how true it is, but somebody I saw had commented that Camelot is just not even a very large team. It's like 45 people or something. So I wonder if that's part of it, you know, and, you know, I wonder what like actually is behind, you know, our perceived lack of content. And I think part of that too also goes back to, you know, just over time, you know, we just expect more and more out of games. So something that would have been relatively simple back in the day is like, well, now that's not enough. You know, if you think about like Star Fox 64 or Wave Race and the amount of content they have, it's kind of laughable by today's standards.
One example of something that's weird is you start the adventure mode and Birdo's in charge of your house, and like Charging Chuck is there and Boo's there, and you're like, okay, I get these neighbors, and they all have different specialties, and they all like want to be proficient in one thing over another. And I was like, oh, this is neat. I'll like learn with them, you know, like what I will, you know, get better at, and then they'll all teach me. I'll go on a little adventure, and then like Birdo's here, that's neat. Like an hour later, I was gone. Like I never went back. I think I went to Birdo like right before the whole campaign was over, and Birdo was like, "Good luck out there," and I'm like, "Cool. What a neat relationship I've built with Birdo." There's just like so much talking at the beginning of the adventure. It kind of sets up like this is your house, and it's like it's just it's a button you push before the next campaign thing starts.
Yeah.
And so kind of sells itself at the beginning as being bigger than it is. And you just blaze through all of those courses. But at the same time, 18 takes like almost 2 hours sometimes, depending on how many people you're playing with or like how much you're really analyzing each shot. So you look at a map and it's just like, oh, that one, you know, rainy area is just one biome that you get to go to. But it's like you could spend a lot of time there if you're really enjoying the mechanics and want to get better at it.
It's a little strange, though, because I think some ideas, and before I continue, I just want to say that my hair looked fine before I left my apartment. When something happened between getting in my car, coming here, so I don't know what's going on with my hair.
I think it's the helmet you use on your motorcycle.
Yeah.
That can really...
I've tried to fix it multiple times. It's driving me nuts. So my hair, does it look strange?
No,
I mean,
it's
fine.
It's a killer swoop, bro.
It's just it's like getting. I don't know. It feels strange. It's distracting me.
Yeah, if it's getting in your eyes and stuff, then that's.
Anyway, this was not the look I was going for. I think it should be the statement of the podcast. Anyway, back to Mario Golf. So, Brandon, I think kind of what crystallized my Mario Golf on Switch experience for me was like I was so excited to check out Speed Golf.
Yeah.
Because I remember watching the trailer with you guys, and we were like, that is going to be so much fun. It's so wild. Like, it just was something that I think kind of lit everybody up in a way. And then I remember doing Speed Golf with my wife, and I'm like, this is not that different. Like, you can't even, like, mess with each other that much.
Right,
like, you have the supers, and they can do some work, and, like, occasionally you'll get some interaction, but a lot of it is just kind of, you know, people just running to their ball and like playing normal golf. Like it doesn't feel like as transformative as I think I envisioned it in my mind. And I don't feel like I expected that much.
The open world fan in me always likes running around the Mushroom Kingdom whenever I can. Like, it's fun to just like explore things. That's why I love Diddy Kong Racing, because you can really just fly around and like see everything from all angles. So like I do like running around these courses. It's fun to like jump off cliffs and stuff like that, and some of like the weirder adventure modes. But I think what they were trying to go for, and the one thing that I think I agree with like almost everything that you're saying. I think the one thing that I could see them bringing to the sport that is interesting is there's two different ways that you can play speed golf. One setting you can do is just time. So it doesn't matter how many strokes you have, it's just time. And so you really start to evaluate, like, doesn't matter how good my shot was.
Right.
You kind of get in that mindset sometimes when it's like a par 5 and you're like, if you get in the rough, who cares? It doesn't matter. Like, I just need to go that way, so it really doesn't, 20 yards here, 30 yards there. I mean, we're all going to end up on the green at the same time. And so it puts a different, it's interesting to kind of shift your thinking in that way to just like, you need to get this thing off the ground before like, don't worry so much about aiming until you finally get to the end there. And you really just don't want to putt it too hard, but you even like don't want to worry about, putting it too close. It's just keep that momentum going. And when I would get to moments like that, I'd be like, that's cool. Like, that's a neat, that's what Mario should be doing to sports, is like speeding it up in a fun way.
Yeah.
That's unexpected. It's just, there's so much glitz and glamour, and it's, for somebody like me who's played a lot of Mario Golf, it's not that tough. Like, playing against the AI, it's not tough.
Right.
And luck has a lot to do with it. And so it doesn't provide a competition in the way I think it's like going for. But
circling back around to Battle Golf, which you did on the screen, that was the most fun I've had with the game yet, and it actually kind of gave me the feeling that I wanted the Speed Golf to give me, where there was palpable tension of like multiple allies going for the same hole. Boy, that's a line. And just like trying to get it done very quickly, and the matches were quick and they were exciting and then they were tense. And I was like really engaged with it. And then I remember you saying, yep, there's only 2 maps.
Yeah.
And I was like, well I guess we've seen everything.
It's like 2 versions of the same map, basically. It's like there should be a Bowser's Castle version of that mode. Come on now.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like you think about that mode and how much fun it is, and like how many Mario settings or like hazards they could put into it. And it just, I don't know, it just feels a little bit like a very good idea that I had legitimate fun with, but I don't know, it felt like there could have been more done with it.
Yeah. Well, I kind of have that feeling about overall, and I haven't seen the whole game. I'd like to see more of it, but I just, I was telling you this the other day. Just like, is there stuff that feels more like Mario? Like, do what I actually want more like a Mario mini golf? Probably. It's like I just want craziness. I want crazy shots. I want ricochets. I want like sticky golf balls. Like when the Yoshi power up where everyone turned into eggs and they were too big to go down the hole. Like stuff like that is what I kind of want to see more of.
One mode that
and it feels like in a lot of ways it's golf with Mario in it, and there's a little bit of a twist, but it's still just kind of vanilla in a way.
One mode that I'm surprised is not competitive. It kind of is. It's basically battle mode, but you just play it solo. There's a course and only a couple of the holes are open, and you can get them in any order that you want, and they're like a lot uphill and downhill, and there are these little like wind gusts that you have to like try to hit the ball into to get them up. And so like that was fun and made me think strategically. It was interesting going like backwards, to try to like save some time. So the adventure mode does get creative. It's just well, we said before, it's just it doesn't take that long to get through it.
Sure.
But
how long does adventure mode take? Admittedly, I haven't touched adventure mode.
Like a day and a half, so I think like
okay.
6 hours, 5-6 hours.
Okay.
Depending on how much time I had to play. I can't remember how much I played the first day, but
it doesn't sound too bad on the face of it, but it also is not like an RPG.
Well,
yeah.
Well, it's so funny that you say that, because I feel like most of the time I'm reviewing RPGs, and so like I'm just used to like anywhere from 30 to 60 hours of playtime. So anytime anybody says 6 hours, it's like one sitting. Yes. Yeah.
And that wasn't counting the single player stuff I did, and then I played a bunch of stuff online. Still haven't done any split screen. Still haven't tested the motion controls.
Yeah.
And I think one of the first disappointing things was like the second time that the bar goes up, it's not like an accuracy play now. It's just like, take this time to do other things, but like we're gonna stop it on the bar for you. And I was like, oh, that was always kind of a fun you'd be sweating that.
But if you do,
just like I gotta nail it on the second.
Yeah.
The second
that's
go around.
kind of confusing to me because if you do stop it like right at the top, it says like nice shot. So that to me implies that it does improve your shot somehow. But maybe not.
Basically, what you're doing, it's stopping itself. Like you could just put the controller down and it'll stop and you'll hit the ball. It's just if you want to move it in the air, up, down, left, or right. If you do the D-pad, it just does straight, north, south, east, west. If you do the analog stick, you can kind of diagonal it if you want. And then,
it feels like it's hard to botch a shot. I think is kind of what this all comes down to.
Once you kind of get the sense of what's going on, like I really have to be. And again, like I don't. It kind of feels nice because like you guys will be talking about Souls games and you'll be talking about racing games.
Yeah,
Hubert will be talking about shooters. I'm good at this games, and it's like it's not. Yeah, I was surprised. I was like, oh, I thought it would have a little bit more teeth. I thought it would be. I wanted to get to battle mode in the campaign, or they like really kind of push you that way when you finish the adventure mode. They're like, now go play battle mode because you can use your me. I was like, oh, neat. And I'm like, oh, I hope this is really tough. And like, it's hard to lose at that. But there's more stuff coming, which Damiani reminded me of. And
you talked about teeth. How is the competition online? That's the real question.
It's hard to. It's tough because sometimes Bowser's surprisingly good. Definitely the character I've seen is most intimidating.
He's got a great outfit.
High skill players love their Bowser. They love to get that power. They can handle the rest of his control issues as long as they can get that past 200 yards. But the main issue I find with people online is you get somebody who just takes a nap. It's just like it takes so long to get back to player 4.
That would drive me
it's just
insane.
Luigi just staring at the hole. And you're like, come on,
God damn it,
come on, Toad, let's do it. But I had a good time, and it's also tough because these are, this is a long commitment sometimes, and there's a lot of settings, which is great. There's a lot of different things you can do to customize, the experience. But I'm just watching the, person going through the settings. It's like, strong wind. Like, why? What are you doing? But it's pretty fun.
Man, this was I'll get into it. This is a very Switch focused episode, but. I remember the first time I booted up Mario Golf and I got out on the course and I was like, this is not a good looking game. Like, it's just not.
Some of those textures.
Yeah, really rough.
The weather effects are fun, and I like you made some snide remark on Slack where you were like, they just sprinkled some weird monsters around the course, and that's it. But it is kind of, I've never played. There was one time I couldn't believe. I think I did it twice in a row, where like one of those giant boulder guys just walked by and I hit the ball right into his face, and then was like, come on, and then I like did it again. But
dude, how fun would that be to like have like a thing where you're like having to attack enemies with the golf balls?
Again, they don't do. You can like. There's a whole thing in the adventure mode where you get strong enough to like knock boulders down and stuff. But like, I never really had to. They did a little of that in the trailer and a little of that during Treehouse. She's like, I'll knock the worm, and it's just like you can curve so strong in that game. It's like I'm just gonna shoot around it. It's fine. I'm always path of least resistance. I don't like to get creative. Just like just like momentum. But because you can run, because there's so much jumping around and really like climbing up cliffs and stuff, like I saw a lot of those textures very up close and yikes.
Yeah, I had a similar response.
Some of those grays. Ugh.
Speaking of Switch, I've been spending some time in Monster Hunter Stories 2. And still have a long way to go in that game, so take these opinions with a grain of salt. I find the way to articulate my current feelings on this game as very difficult, and I worry that I'm going to sound a lot more harsh than I intend to.
Nice.
And I think part of it is just because the last 2 major Monster Hunter games, I think, have been just very impressive in terms of their ambition, and even something like Rise is very, very different from Monster Hunter World. And I think just like the Monster Hunter team seems so full of ideas, and this is just a game that is just like not that. It's basic and it's charming and it's fun and it's very easy to get lost in, but I'm like, this reminds me exactly of my time in Monster Hunter Stories 1. Like, it doesn't feel, like this huge leap. And I think it doesn't also have the kind of novelty that Monster Hunter Stories 1 had, where it was like, okay, we're going to take, this very established franchise and completely put it in a different genre, and we have to, reinterpret the mechanics of this real-time action game into this turn-based RPG. And so that was kind of fun, but, that I've already seen them do it once successfully. And to their credit, I think a lot of the mechanics in Stories are still super fun. Like going around and like getting monsters and then going to your little stable and hatching them and forming this team is just super satisfying. And the game gives you a ton to do. I mean, you go out there, and I always hate in JRPGs when you start the game and then 20 hours in, it's like, okay, now you can go and explore the world.
Right.
Because I love, not just in RPGs, but in any genre, I love having access to a big wide open map and going and checking everything off the box. The older I get, the more completionist I become. And to Story 2's credit, it doesn't take long, and you get, a pretty wide area to explore. And it's like, if you want to go and you just want to go into all these monster dens and you want to gather all these materials and you want to start combining items and getting a ton of potions and all of this stuff, you can go and you can do that. And so I really appreciate that. And the art style, which you guys have seen, is just fantastic. I mean, I've said it time and time again, where I would love a full-blown Monster Hunter game to take advantage of this style, because I think just sort of the cel-shaded cartoony look allows not only the human characters but the monsters themselves to express so much emotion. Like you go and you fight a Puke and you're like, this creature was always meant to be a cartoon. He's just this big green lovable goofball that shoots poison out of his tail, and his face gets all puffy and red, and it's like by being more exaggerated, you feel even more complete in a way. And so that's really nice. But the story is just, it's the kind of story that is super serviceable, but so far is just impossible to get attached to, where it's it's just every Monster Hunter story is just doing the same thing over and over again, where it's oh no, the monsters are going crazy. What's going on? We better go investigate.
That was going to be my counters. What's the difference? What's the difference in the vibe between this and World?
The vibe between this and World is there's more talking, I would say. Just because of it's a JRPG, I think you spend more time engaging with the story, and I'm not sure that is helping it. You know what I mean? And it's fine. The characters are charming, right? The chief is this big, boisterous kind of ho man, and you get this companion that was in the first game, this feline that can talk, that Huber says he reminds him of Meowth, and that's not too far off, but he's quirky and fun, and it's all there's a base level charm there, but it's all pretty shallow. And I think if you know what you're going in for, where you're I want a simple, fun JRPG that I can just kind of turn my mind off and enjoy, I think that's what this is. And I'm enjoying it. It's just not oh my God, this is incredible, or boy, this is really taking Monster Hunter in a super fascinating, interesting, different way. It's no, this is a fun, simple RPG made for Japanese children, is what it is. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's also not... there has not been a single moment where I've been wow, that was incredible. It's not
bringing out your inner Japanese child.
My inner Japanese child is always there. I think that's probably why I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, Monster Hunter Rise always cracked me up because... And World as well, although I've actually played more Rise than World, because it kind of feels like a cult. It's just, it's like Pokemon kind of also, where you just keep getting introduced to new people who like the subject matter, be it catching Pokemon or, hunting or training monsters, way more than the last person you met. And so there's just kind of a redundancy to yeah, I know we're all super into this, but what else is going on? And it's nothing else.
Right.
We're all everything anybody does. Why I love Monster Hunter so much is just because it's so cozy and because it balances that with a lot of like, juggling of dessert items and like, a flamboyishness that's just fun to watch.
Yeah. And I think that coziness definitely comes through, but like I was thinking about it and I was like, in a way, the turn-based nature kind of takes away from what makes Monster Hunter so appealing, because they have like on some level they have the mechanics of Monster Hunter, right, where you target different parts of the monster, and if you destroy that part, you'll take away certain abilities from the monster, and you have different weapons that are effective against certain type of creatures and not as effective against others, and it's like that is all like classic Monster Hunter stuff. But what makes Monster Hunter so enjoyable, and like why I can do the same hunts over and over and over and over again and still be interested, is because of the real-time nature of it. It's like, oh, like fighting a Rathalos is exciting because when it swoops down, like you have to actually dive out of the way. Whereas here it's like, I just have to choose the right thing from the menu. And that's fine, but it's just, I think it's trying to take something and put it in a format where it cannot shine quite as well, if that makes sense.
So for Milo, Stories 2 is the bridge to World. Like I should introduce him to Stories 2 first.
Yeah,
so he can pick up the fundamentals and the terminology.
Yeah.
Then it's time for real-time 360-degree dodging.
In a way, and I've said this before, but in a way I think like if the Monster Hunter intimidation is still there, I do think Stories or Stories 2 is the perfect introduction for you, because again, it will introduce you to some concepts that will make more sense when you go and you play Monster Hunter. But I think, you talked about that coziness, and I think part of that coziness comes from familiarity, where it's like, okay, I know what a Rathalos is, I know what a Puke Puke is, I know what all these things are, and I think that would help. And so if Monster Hunter is like too intimidating, or like you bounced off it or something, I do think that this is like a gateway into that world. And I am hesitant with some of these criticisms, and this is definitely not my fully formed opinion, because I've been doing a lot of wandering around, a lot of collecting stuff, a lot of side stuff, a lot of side quests. So I haven't been plowing through a lot on the main story. And so maybe the main story gets a lot better and more interesting, and the criticisms that I have kind of melt away. I think that could happen. But there has been nothing in the main story so far where I'm like, oh yeah, like this, I gotta know what happens next. So, yeah. Brandon, I know you were really interested in Stories 2.
Yes.
You expressed at E3.
Got Stories 1 on mobile and putz through that a little bit.
Wow.
Just got past all the tutorial stuff, and so I could see the systems.
And I feel like it's probably hard, just with Milo around, to like commit to a lot of RPGs.
Right.
I would imagine. Like, is this something, do any of these criticisms, I guess, make you feel any differently about Stories 2, or is this about what you expected?
Yeah, it was about what I expected from the attitude of the first game and what I saw. But I didn't know. I think I got the first game and then just kind of saw like, okay, here's how the camera works, and like, okay, I got this, and I can have a save file here that I can just jump back into. Then E3 happened, but I think I got Stories 2 like 4 or 5, but just drifted across my eyeballs, and every time something's like Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest related, I'm always like, huh? Like mobile. And this was like, oh, this is the thing, and I know the sequel to this is coming out, so I should check this out. But even just from that small slice, I could tell, like, okay, this is a very different energy than what I remember. Not only that, but like just the dialogue and the characters and the music and the world and how it was telling its story. But from my experience with Monster Hunter, they throw you into that pretty quickly. Like, there are resources that you can have, like long tutorials that you can do, or you can completely skip those and just like, nope, I want to run right out into the battlefield. So that was like, that's a different vibe.
Yeah,
obviously.
Definitely. I actually think Rise specifically, because Rise goes back to the older Monster Hunter style of having offline single-player quests and online quests, and I do think the offline single-player quests are really good at sort of helping new hunters, and they don't overwhelm you.
Is this called Stories in Japan?
That's a great question.
I think so, yeah.
I think it's a great title for both of these.
Yeah.
That really set my expectations. Got it. Like Monster Hunter theater mode. Like, cool. You just kick back It's like that thing in Guilty Gear where you just watch like the characters yell at each other for 4 hours. You're like,
man,
set my expectations right there. Thank you.
The talking about the Guilty Gear Strive story in the review was really tough because I was like, okay, I spent hours like mostly getting caught up in the lore, or at least dipping into the lore enough to have like some grasp on what's going on, and then watching the 4.5 hours of Strive story and being like, this is great. But if you didn't do that prep work, it's like you're probably watching something in a foreign language without subtitles. Like that's what it has to feel like.
Right.
They just don't get you up to speed at all. It's crazy.
You're watching like scenes from for like season 8 of Supernatural without watching any of it. You're like, what?
Right. What is
Characters
going on?
are dying right and left. You're like, what's happening?
Something I do want to bring up, though, is I've been playing Stories 2 on Switch, and this will be a running theme for things that I'll be talking about on Switch. Boy, that frame rate, not great. Mm-hmm. And it's such a bummer because, you have this big, open, beautiful world, great art direction, and then you'll just, like, go near a waterfall, and you're like, yeah, the frame rate is definitely plummeting. And it's just infuriating. Like, it's a good-looking game, but it is in no way like a technically demanding game. You know what I mean? Like you look at it and you're like, come on, like this shouldn't be happening. And it just
well, that's what's surprising to me because to me, Rise looks and performs better than you think it should. Like
yeah, it does.
There's a sense of like this is a Switch game, you know, really?
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of disappointing that a game that in a lot of ways seems simpler because the combat's turn-based and you probably don't have, I imagine you don't have as much verticality in the maps and such that you would think they would be able to make that run better,
Right. And Blood, I think that kind of, and maybe it's not fair to compare, this side story that clearly has like a different objective in mind to a full-blown new Monster Hunter, but I think that was what was so impressive about Rise was not only from a design standpoint did it really distinguish itself, but it looked and ran fantastic, as you said, and you get online and it's like, oh god, I've had terrible online experiences on Switch. Like when I play Smash Online, it's like a crapshoot whether I have a great time or just a miserable time. And I have pretty much had nothing but flawless experiences with Monster Hunter Rise Online. And so it's just like on every conceivable level, it felt like the game delivered. And this just doesn't have that same spark to it in a way. Like it's just serviceable. And there's, like I said, I think especially if you're in the mood for it, if you're in the mood to chill and relax and have fun, you can have a very, very good time with it. But I don't know. I don't think it's going to be one that comes up like at end of the year discussions.
Sure.
Let's say. Blood. I'm very excited that you brought this to Frame Trap because I haven't really gotten to talk about it since I reviewed it a few years ago, and that is Metroid Samus Returns.
Yeah.
This is a game that I really enjoyed and gave a high score to, and I still think of fondly, but is definitely a very divisive game among the Metroid fan base. There's a lot of people that didn't like it or were underwhelmed by it, and so I'm curious, you're a very big Metroid fan, what your take on it was.
I don't recall that was divisive. I'm looking forward to
yeah, maybe it's just the pockets of the internet that I'm looking.
Sure,
but
sure.
I wasn't paying very close attention, so I don't. Yeah,
I think critically it was pretty well received, but I definitely saw some backlash among fans.
Yeah, I think. Just to kind of recap, like I got it when it came out and I started it and. For whatever reason, didn't get that far in it. And then I got a new 3DS last year after I discovered my original 3DS, my launch 3DS, the circle pad had just like disintegrated over time. So I got a new 3DS, but and I had the intention of finally playing through Metroid last year, and then kind of started and stopped about the same amount of time. And so this time, okay, Metroid Dread's coming. Let's play this game.
It's so funny that you bring that up because I feel like we get questions all the time and we talk a lot about like, oh man, I got to start this game and I never got to finish it. What feels even worse than that is exactly what you described, where you're like, okay, I really want to play more of that game, and then you pick it back up and you play like just as much as you originally did.
Stardew Valley.
Yeah. Yes. That is the worst. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's the way that they've kind of changed things up is interesting. I have a lot of kind of back and forth on it. It's, you know, for one, it's a difficult game to do a remake of, right? I'm sure a lot of people directly compared it to the fan game, which I never picked up. I feel a little bit weird about this thing's not quite legal. Should I download it? You know? And it's also, you know, all done in 3D, which I think is like actually turns out to be one of the benefits in that there's just so much more life given to the backgrounds. And there are so many different times throughout the game where it's just like I look back there and there's like this river running and waterfalls and, you know, all of these other sort of not quite identifiable, you know, hallways and devices. And there's a lot of sort of backstory that somebody had to kind of create to decide what's going to be in these spaces that on the Game Boy was just a black screen.
Right.
And they have a lot of that going on. I think for me, the biggest detriment to playing the game is just the 3DS itself. Yeah. Going back and trying to play on the 3DS again after so long, and playing an action game like that with a circle pad, it's kind of tiring to me. It's tiring to hold it. It's tiring to sit in that position. Using the circle pad has never been something I've been all that fond of. It feels there's a lot of tension always to using it back and forth. Even though the motion of it is fine and like doing like, you know, jumping in between things and all that, I don't have too many issues with. It's just the constant like pull of that spring.
Yes.
There's just something about it like, all right, I'm tired of this for now. I'm gonna go to bed.
That pull of the spring, like you feel it so tangibly, you know, like you're just like this feels like it could break at any moment. Yeah.
And then the other thing is I have this weird thing with the 3DS where I feel like somewhat incomplete if I don't play in 3D.
Oh, interesting.
There is that depth I really do appreciate, especially towards some of the later boss battles and the backgrounds and stuff. Like it really works really well for this game. But at the same time, there's that constant finickiness of it, right? That sometimes you'll get the double image or whatever, and
yeah, I have not turned 3D. I didn't even think about 3D when I use my 3DS. Like I haven't used 3D on my 3DS in years. Like I just abandoned it, and so it like you reminded me of something that's in the title of the system.
Right. But design-wise, it's an odd duck because they're really crafting a whole new game in some ways. The core elements are still the same, right? And it's the most linear Metroid probably, in that you know you've got the Metroids evolving, and you have to go through and eliminate all of them as they get more and more reptilian, for lack of a better word. So you know you start with ones that have a kind of a shell on the top of them, and then as time goes on, they get more of a body and limbs and all of that, and become more dragon-like. And so you can't go through the whole world until you've like cleared these checklists of you need this much DNA to lower the whatever, the liquid level, the acid level, which is purple in the remake. And that's a decision they had to make. It's like, okay, we don't want it to look like lava. What do we want it to look like? It'll be purple. But I feel otherwise, like in terms of a lot of the maps and stuff, you know, they're kind of just having to create all of that. And I think in some ways that works, and in some ways it doesn't work. I think that some of the things that Metroid 2 introduced, like the spider ball, are really great. bringing power bombs in from Super Metroid. I wasn't sure about, but what they do in conjunction with the Spider Bolt, where like it can launch you through certain areas. Like that's a neat mechanic. The Aeon abilities, I'm a split on. So I think the scan is cool. Like that's a better way of getting a hold of the map and looking around areas than the old X-ray visor. And I think
from Metroid 2 specifically from the Game Boy game.
The X-ray visor was introduced in Super Metroid.
Okay.
And then there's the last Aeon ability that you get where you slow time to go across like the blocks that fall from under your feet. That's a cool thing, but it's not really used a whole lot. There's like one other section where you're dodging fireballs. Otherwise, it's not used that much. And then the shield and the turbo shot, I can just take it or leave it. They're not that interesting to me. And I guess the other thing that's with the power-ups is I feel they leaned a little too far in the Metroid 3 direction. Like having the gravity suit, like I didn't feel a need to have the gravity suit. It just sort of felt like it was there because we've had it in Super Metroid and we had it in the Prime games.
Are these spoilers, bro?
No.
Okay.
No.
There's I mean, you were talking about spoilers. There's one thing I like that they changed in the ending, and there's one thing I don't like that they changed in the ending. That's about all I'll say about that.
Do you have a fear from somebody who doesn't know a heck of a lot about Metroid from experience? Remembering all of this from the retrospective, though, do you worry that a lot of the counter melee stuff that's going to be in Metroid 5 and Dread, that'll kind of maybe have the same consequence where you're just like you get so used to it before the end, or you think they're going to be able to like shake that up, make you actually fear like the timing of it?
I think that they already shake it up a fair amount with the bosses in Samus Returns. The first couple of times that I tried it, I really didn't care for the melee counter, and it wasn't clicking for me. This time, for whatever reason, it just clicked a lot better. There's a very specific sound effect that goes with it, so maybe it's a matter of like, you should probably wear headphones for this game. I think that helps.
But it's interesting because you mentioned, like the source material that they're taking for Samus Returns is a Game Boy game, and I think it like limits it so much. And you talked about like how they basically had to create these environments and visualize them in a way that wasn't possible on the Game Boy. And I think what is also interesting about the Game Boy game is its whole design of like you having a counter and hunting down Metroids, right? Like that was presumably done because of the limited hardware, right? Like it's a very basic sort of objective. Did you feel like that structure was, I guess, reinterpreted here in a meaningful way? Did it ever feel repetitious to you? Because like a negative that comes to my mind thinking about Samus Returns is you talked about like the Metroids getting more reptilian, and you definitely fight like the same type of boss again and again and again.
Yeah, it certainly is. One of the weaknesses of the design in general is that, before you get to a new version, fighting one Alpha Metroid or one Zeta Metroid against another, comparing that fight against another, it's basically the same fight.
Right.
And I think it might also make it slightly worse that they have these elaborate counter animations. And so Samus is going to jump up in its face and get around its back the exact same way and pull its neck back. And all of those things do kind of get repetitive. One thing I had noticed with the last set, though, the Omega Metroids, is that they did seem to like visually be a little bit different, or at least the last Omega Metroid looked a little bit more evolved than the others, or it had like more scaling on it, more like the Queen Metroid in a way. So I thought that was interesting that it wasn't entirely like the same character model there. I do think that the ice beam is like super nerfed in this game. You have to select it separately. It doesn't combine with the other beams. And what's funny is I've always thought this, even with Metroid 2, the basic standard Metroids are still way more threatening than any of these Metroid boss fights.
Yeah.
They just put you into panic. The way that they latch onto you.
That was the first word that came to mind was panic, yeah.
Yeah. But with the ice beam in this one, it's like you've got like a second and a half to shoot that missile after you freeze, and then it just unfreezes. And there's not really a lot of places where you use like enemies as platforms. It's not absent. There are points when you can do that, but it's not the kind of mechanic that was really prevalent in the first 3 games.
Yeah. So now that you've played through this, right, and we have Metroid Dread really getting a lot of excitement at E3, and I think getting a lot of excitement from us, do you have more faith or more concerns for Metroid Dread and Mercury Steam after completing this game?
I think I have more faith. I think that some of the things they've done in here with the grappling beam, there's a lot of extra little things that you pull, and times where you use the grappling beam to like yank enemies off of the ceiling and that kind of thing. I think that was a creative thing. And again, the grappling beam was not even part of Metroid 2. I do hope that they can get away from repeating like every Super Metroid ability again.
Yeah,
because that's one again with the gravity suit and the super missiles. Like I just didn't feel like they were really like that significant to need to come back here. Whereas like in Super Metroid, you get the gravity suit and it unlocks this whole region that the only reason that you couldn't explore it before is because you couldn't traverse through it. And with this, the regions just unlocks sequentially, and there's not a whole lot of that kind of thing. And that's another one of my criticisms in it. It's partly a consequence of being a Metroid 2 remake, but there's no reason to backtrack other than to backtrack and to pick up items.
Well, that was a question that I had for you is, despite the very linear nature of the game, do you feel like the obligatory hidden items, your energy tanks and your missile tanks and that sort of thing, do you feel like those were satisfying to collect?
I do. I actually think they did a good job with that as well, because I feel like in a lot of past Metroid games, it'll just be like you shoot the right tile and you see the thing and you pick it up. And there are some of those, but there are a lot of sort of mini mazes and mini puzzles and, okay, what do I need to do? I see it. I know, and especially with the scan ability, which shows you all the items if they're in the vicinity. But it's like, I know where this is, but the route to get there is on some other screen or requires some ability I don't have yet or something like that. And so I think that's good, but then it's, again, there's nothing like Super Metroid where you go up an elevator and you realize like, oh, I'm back at the beginning of the game again. And, there's none of that kind of surprise that you get from those games traditionally. And again, that's partly due to just the classic Metroid 2 design, but maybe they should have broken away from that a little bit more to give you a reason to go back other than being a completionist.
It's funny that you talk about kind of the cramming of elements from Super Metroid into Samus Returns, and it's like, it almost is like, well, maybe from their perspective, it's like Metroid just disappears for such long periods of time that, like, I can imagine being like, wait, it's been 10 years. Like, let's try to throw as much as we can.
Yeah, well, I feel like that with the music, too, because one of my, disappointments of the soundtrack is I know there are, like, some themes or, some songs in Metroid 2 that are, like, not that great. They're just kind of ambient and weird noises. But there's some songs in there that I really like, and I felt like they didn't get used that much. The very iconic songs that, okay, it was there, and I like that arrangement that they did, but it was just seemed like it was very brief towards the beginning of the game. And then as I got farther into the game, I just, okay, I'm hearing Lore Norfair again, and I'm hearing, one of the Brinstar Meridia themes and stuff from Super Metroid more than I'm hearing stuff from Metroid 2.
Interesting.
So
that's a good observation.
That's a weird thing there, too. One thing I do like that they added was the whole crazy mining robot, which actually looks a lot like one of the Emmy in Metroid Dread.
Oh.
So you saw this 2 times. Both times it steals your item before you pick it up. The first one is sort of like a chase, and it just kind of grinds through all the passageways and alters them. And you see power-ups, and like, oh, I want to get that. But it's like, nope, there's this thing coming. You got to get out of the way.
That is that reminds me of Mega Man X very explicitly, yeah.
And then the boss fight, when you actually confront it to get the power bombs, it's very complex. There's a lot of different waves to it, and it keeps changing. And it took me probably more tries than any other boss in the game.
Blood, okay, because there was definitely a boss, and it only was one boss in Samus Returns that I felt like I really struggled with, and it must have been that boss. Like I'm having a hard time remember specifically, but yeah, like it has just a ton of different, I guess, phases or steps to completing it. Yeah. Man, now I kind of want to replay it before Metroid Dread comes out.
Yeah, so I think, that boss, the Queen, and there's one other boss that were all sort of towards the end that they pushed you a lot more than any of the other Metroids before them.
Cool. Brandon, sometimes somebody brings a game, like Blood brings a lot of like indie games where it's like, oh, I've never heard of that before, and it's like fun. You hear about it for the first time, and then every once in a while somebody's like, I decided to go back to this, and I'm like, what made you go back to The Crew 2?
The Ubisoft press conference. So I moved, like many other things I will talk about here at EC Allies. It always comes back to Milo. And I just moved, and there's a lot of small planes that fly over my house now. And Milo, of course, is just like obsessed with all of that. So they're just like big jets flying over, and but at a greater distance. So I'm just like looking at these planes, and I kept thinking about Microsoft Flight Simulator. And it's I know it's smaller now, but I remember that was such a laborious process of like actually getting that up and running. Worth it, but took a while. And so I was always thinking like, well, maybe I'll wait till it comes out on Xbox, and then that'll be a reason to dive back in, because I'm curious, like fly over my neighborhood. And then they were just doing their montage in the Ubisoft press conference. I was like, oh yeah, The Crew. And I'm like, I own that. I could just download that tonight. Well, I had that on PS4, and I couldn't play it on PS5.
Really?
I'm like, I'm not gonna. Yeah, I don't know because I got it for free or something. There was something. It just had a little icon on the top right. I was like, nope, you can't. It was with all these other PS4 games that I could just boot right from that menu on my PS5.
A lot of times when I've seen that, it's because you've had a demo, but so I don't know.
I mean, that was the console I played. That was the console we did our conversations of The Crew 2 on. And so I was like, okay, somebody said it might have been on Game Pass, but I saw it on Steam for like $10-$15 or something. They had some, like Ubisoft was doing some sale during E3.
We're gonna find out that you have that on Xbox.
And they said, of course. And
because I'm pretty sure I play most racing games on Xbox when I have the choice.
Well, it's the other thing too, is I don't know if you could. Well, you probably play it on Series X, but anyway, I have it on PC now. There is new content that was added to it, but as just an open world fan, it's been really fun. One of the things that they do well that I remember is you can bounce between a lot of different content very, very fast. And I remember it loaded pretty well, but like on the PC, it's lickety split, just jumping around. So it's fun to like zoom in and out of the map and check stuff. But
the loading times in those games are insane. Just in general, like I don't know what kind of witch magic they used. For that map.
The consequence is the layout of a lot of the locations in the U.S. that I've been to are kind of hilariously represented.
Oh yeah.
But
I love making fun of that.
Yeah, and there's some areas. I think Niagara Falls is the one where I was like, it would have been best just literally not to even call it Niagara Falls. Just don't even put it on the map. It's not even there. Like, it's just a spot on the map called Niagara Falls, and I flew around, drove boats. So I was like, where is it? There's nothing. There's a couple waterfalls here, but there's nothing.
Isn't that one of the major selling points of the game, though, is the cross-country nature of it?
Absolutely,
right. Yeah. And they straight up skip stuff like San Diego's. Now, there was a lot of stuff as a Californian. I was like, oh, I'm surprised you just kind of went over that city. But it's like, I think that was the smart thing to do, is like, just do it or don't. But there are a couple things they put on the map. Like Vegas is pretty. It's pretty Vegas. Like there's not a lot.
Vegas is one of the more complex areas.
There's a ton more dumb hotels and parking lots outside of the main strip. But like every
boat
major
races through those
every major landmark
stuff,
it's all there. And again, I know I just kind of touched upon it, but you can clearly see on the map the stuff that you have done, stuff that you haven't, stuff that just got unlocked. Plus, there's a menu that you can scroll through. It took me a while to find, actually, on my first playthrough that I immediately went to just be like, all right, one race, next race, next race. So it was just a nice. It was like Ubisoft was that first day or second day. Ubisoft was pretty early on in E3, I believe. And so it was. I knew I was going to get home and have like an hour before I was going to pass out and have to come in and do more E3 the next day. And so it was nice, like, to have something that, like, you know, wasn't required of me. And there's like new film stuff. Have you seen this? There's new like Universal Studios style backlot.
Oh, okay.
Jumping through billboards and craziness.
Nice. I like jumping through billboards.
Yeah. But it's a lot of. It's kind of like what GTA Online did, where, you know, they set up a lot of point-to-point races on the map that was available in GTA 5, and then later added, you know, like, you can put in ramps now, and you can basically just build your own crazy tubes and jumps, and, you know, you can like have cars flying through the air. So that's fun. My number one thing against The Crew 2 is the voiceover. It's just so bad all over the place. It's just, and it's not necessarily the performances. It's just like they have this weird. There's like 16 disciplines. There's 4 major categories and then 4 disciplines within each category. And some of those are super wild, like Hello, when you're riding around a car in a big fan in a balloon. What am I thinking of? It can go on water. It can go on land.
Oh, hovercraft.
Hovercrafts. Like that's one of them.
Or airboat.
And a lot of them, like a lot of these characters that specialize in these different things, like yell at each other, like hate each other, and they're like, "That guy doesn't know what real racing is." And it's like, I don't care, dude. Let me just do the race. Like, I don't. Like, they just bicker a lot, and it's such a strange vibe. It's like, why? It's like this world of yours doesn't exist. Like, you're talking about nonsense because there's no. We get the X Games. It's about as crazy as we get when it comes to this. And this is clearly like the entire U.S. has been bought out by all these commercial, you know, interests, you know, to make this big wild race that like everyone's into. But it's just kind of goofy and silly in that way. And so every now and then they get like really serious. Like, we talk about like drag racing. It's like, come on, skip. I think I listened to those monologues when I first played Crew 2 and gleefully skipped every single one of them.
It's funny that you talk about like the voiceover being a major problem, and I wouldn't say it's a major problem, but you made me think of Forza Horizon, which I think is excellent, and every time I dip into it, I have a great time. But there's something about like the voiceover that accompanies
festival,
you. Yeah, the festival. It's like trying to be like fun and hip, and it's fine, but it's just like it creates like a weird vibe. It just feels like it's trying like slightly too hard.
This is why Need for Speed started to piss me off. It's just like, what are you doing? Don't put these weird. Stop.
I do feel like, I guess to argue for Need for Speed, like, it's not Need for Speed if it isn't like a little cringe-inducing, right? Like, I feel like that is kind of part of the
shifted that. I can't remember. Like, did Most Wanted come out after Hot Pursuit, or was that?
Yes.
I know they made like 2 or 3 Hot Pursuits.
Well, yeah. So they did. Yeah, Most Wanted definitely came out after Hot Pursuit.
Okay.
But then they made new games that had those names later.
Yeah.
When Criterion started making them.
But all the story nonsense you can skip so quickly. It's just fun to kind of revisit, you know, just to see like all these different landmarks like from a distance, and just like, oh, I remember this, and like bounce around. And it was very easy, accessible content. The game booted up super fast. It was just nice. It was a very relaxing thing to do after a long day of work.
Yeah, it's kind of cool hearing this because like you're not a racing game guy, but this is something that can appeal to you, and you can get some satisfaction from based on other genres that you like.
Never played a Horizon game, but I've always been very, very close. This latest one, holy cow, is one of the prettiest looking games I've ever seen in my life. I think I might check out 5.
Yeah, 5.
I mean, you can get 4 on Game Pass too. So,
but there's just something about and not to mention just, you know, flying a plane low and then just like hop, I'm in a boat. Whee!
Yeah, that is pretty
like
cool.
Like a Transformer is pretty fun. And they again just it's been out for so long. There's so much content, hours and hours of stuff to do, and they added like an achievement system. So there's like a whole separate currency for like emotes. Whatever, you know, like weird decals you can put above your car to emote. Who cares? But
you can in Horizon the same. You can do all the dress up and emotes and all that.
I do like mini little achievement systems because they sometimes remind me of like controls I forgot work a certain way or functionality of cars and stuff. So it's neat to see. And just in the limited amount of time I invested in it, it's neat for them to be like, you've flown 1,000,000 miles or whatever. I'm like, oh, cool.
You know, Ubisoft gets a lot of justifiable flack, but something that I do think they do well is that support.
Yeah.
And it's like there's so many games where you've been away for 6 months or a year or whatever, and you come in and it's like this is like the whole new game.
It's
not a whole new game, maybe not that far, but
I shouldn't be conflicted by it, but it's funny because they have this like hour-long pre-show before their E3, and it's like I see these games like you're still talking about this game, and it's we should applaud. Yeah, we should totally celebrate and be like, how awesome for this community to be. Yeah, you know.
For Honor, man.
Yeah, For Honor.
Yeah.
For Honor's been out for years, and they've added so much stuff to it. Yeah.
There is that part of me whenever they talk about Elder Scrolls Online that I'm like, never played it. Go for it, Elder Scrolls Online. Like, yeah. Communities that just still get to hang out with the game they love.
Yeah, I mean, I think for an MMO, like the obligation of support is a little bit more.
Rainbow Six. And,
dude, Rainbow Six.
Breakpoint, I'd back off. I'm sorry, Breakpoint players. It's not, Ghost Recon. It's time to pack it up.
Time to pack it up.
No more updates.
Yeah, it's funny because the Ubisoft pre-E3 thing, where it was just like them in all their different open world games, like going forward. That's like your ideal video. Like, I bet you just watched that and felt at peace.
And Crew 3 next gen, maybe down to see if they could
do
on Series X.
Yeah,
PS5,
I think they probably will.
Did the Crew 2
clean that
do
engine
well?
up a little bit?
I have like no concept on.
No idea.
I don't really know how well it's
Success.
done, but they wouldn't have the support if it weren't doing well, right? I think that's the evidence right there.
I don't remember a lot of cheering when it launched. I remember like you being, rightfully so because you were reviewing it. You like when we had a conversation, I was like, "This is fun." You were like, "Yeah, there's all of these myriad issues that I have that I would wish all racing games would do." But it's a series I would definitely check out if it came back.
Well, it's time to heat things up. That was a nice, chill Crew 2 conversation. So let's get into the sizzle. And you know what? I want some heat on this. So for the sizzle, in honor of 4th of July weekend, what I came up with is, in your opinion, what is the worst major holiday? Now, don't throw me bullshit like Arbor Day.
Well,
or
major
President's
holidays can be
Day.
the hard part to determine. Like,
Yeah. I mean, the big boys. Like I'm talking like New Year's, Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas, 4th of July.
I think New Year's for me.
Okay,
might be a good place to start.
It might be a good place to start. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
because there's not really. You just stay up really late and watch a clock count down and drink and then it's like everyone makes a bunch of promises that they abandon 2 weeks later. It's like
Blood. I think
what
New
are
Year's
we
is a good
actually
pick.
celebrating?
And you know what? I feel like the entertainment industry like kind of lets us down on New Year's. Like think about Christmas, right? And how many like Christmas movies they make, and like how like shopping malls like transform.
Right.
Like you go and you watch like the ball drop and whatever like dumb concerts they do, and they're always fucking terrible. Like they're just not good.
Everyone's on vacation.
Yeah.
That's always cracks me up because I think Easter's more horrifying than New Year's, but I'll roll with this.
I'm interested in your Easter.
We both played Animal Crossing. I also was in Vegas at the Millennium when the ball dropped. I was on the Strip, and that was pretty awesome. That was definitely a memory that I do sit on my ass a lot to many of the other New Year's is. But it's funny being married to Amanda because she's in the entertainment industry, and so she's going out for commercial auditions and games and movies and like right around the time around mid-December where we're like, okay, we should just stop. Like one of it, like, Isla God Lover, like takes off. Like I was just like, I'm gone. Like you're like, I am getting on a plane. I'm out. Her industry will just stop. It's so funny because it's so competitive and cutthroat, but they do not mess with their vacation. They all like even like the executives getting paid way more than they possibly should. Just no one needs to be here on Monday. Goodbye.
But one of the things,
by January 1st, I mean they're in Cabo. Like they're not even watching the Clark's Rockin' Eve.
Cabo is such a like executive place to go.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or islands don't even
But that's
have
what
names.
I think so funny about it though, because there's other than like St. Patrick's Day maybe, like there's no other holiday that just seems so completely skippable. There's so many years Where you're like, hey, Mom, you're gonna stay up? No, I'm gonna go to bed. And like, or I gotta fly on New Year's, but the flights are cheaper, so whatever. We'll just, we'll watch the fireworks as we land out of the plane. It just like, just people just if they can skip it, they skip it.
You're
if
so
they go to a
tired after
bonfire, they'll go to a
Christmas.
bonfire. If they don't feel like driving that far, they don't feel
And
like
after
driving that
Hanukkah
far.
or Christmas, you're just beat. You're just like, who cares?
Your comparison to St. Patrick's Day is really interesting because, like, I feel like St. Patrick's Day kind of has like this honesty to it that New Year's doesn't have, where like, one, you get the Shamrock Shake, which is just a win, but also like St. Patrick's Day, it's like, if you want to, like, you just get shit-faced on St. Patrick's Day. It's just kind of like how you celebrate St. Patrick's Day, which you can also do on New Year's, but you're sort of right, Blood, where it's like this weird, like, oh, I guess I better come up with, like, a goal that I'm going to abandon in 2 weeks. And, like, that's just super dumb anyway. Like, there's the key to success is to, like, have a goal that you deeply care about, not, like, some flimsy obligation just because it happens to be a new year on the calendar. Like, I don't know. I just don't think that like that's that motivating.
There's so much of a build-up, especially after Christmas, because it's exactly a week after Christmas. It's the same day as Christmas is New Year's Day. So there's so much of a build-up. But what's great about St. Patrick's Day, it's like, none of us are like, hey, St. Patrick's Day's in 2 weeks. Like it just kind of creeps up. Like I just always like forget, and then you're just like, oh. You're like, oh.
I was like, I'm not wearing the green shirt today.
Well, I feel like St. Patrick's Day like has some like dumb fun to it, where they're like, ha, the beer is green, and you're like, okay, all right, this is a silly.
Give me another one, I guess.
Yeah, this is a silly holiday. Yeah. Boy, New Year's is good. Brendan, is yours Easter?
Easter's just like. All I think of is with Easter is pastels and uncomfortable pants and like long service-like things, whether they have a religious nature or just brunch. Like there's just a lot of commitment in loafers, and I'm just not a fan. And it's always hot. So for some reason, I don't know why, it's always just uncomfortable. There's no clouds, and just like lots of kids yelling, and just I don't know. It's just not a thing I would generally look forward to. But that's just me.
No, I think
I have
those
a
are
lot
two
of
good
great
picks.
Easter memories. So
I have a lot of great New Year's memories, but I guess we partied different ways. It's all, I mean, many Easters I recall I was with family, so it's always nice to be around family. It's just sometimes that family would go somewhere where, I remember losing it one time, and this is so silly, just like a view into my mind. We were waiting to be seated at this place, and there's a piano, and some kid went over and started jamming on the piano, and I lost it. And Amanda's like, what? She's like, he's just like playing piano. I'm like, do we all get to play piano? Can I play piano after him? What if every single person in this room played piano? What if everybody was like, oh, it's my turn? What if you just like, everywhere you went, constant piano playing? She was just like, do you not like to have fun? I'm like, I don't understand why this kid gets to be the center of attention. Says the guy with like 5 podcasts.
Thinking about it, I think 4th of July has kind of lost some appeal to me. Because like, I have really great 4th of July memories, and like as a kid, being like very entertained, like going to like the citywide fireworks and like that being really exciting. Mm-hmm. And then when you're a teenager, right, it's like the illegal fireworks, and you're like, oh yeah. But like now as an adult, like that's not even cool anymore.
It's definitely harder here in LA.
Yeah, and so it's just like
just the whole parking nightmare of wherever you might want to go.
Yeah, like across the board. Fireworks have just kind of lost their appeal, and as you're saying with the parking, it's like I don't know if I'm motivated. Like I don't know if it's that cool that I want to like deal with the traffic nightmare, and so it's just like really the only thing you have to look forward to, which is not bad, is like grilled food, and that's fine, but it's like not special. Like you can have a barbecue whenever you want. I don't know.
If you live in LA, on the 4th of July, someone's gonna blow something up somewhere near
That's
you.
fair.
So like if you don't do fireworks, someone will take care of it for you.
Yeah.
In your relatively near
I will
vicinity.
say though, I hear even more of that in Omaha.
Wow.
The booming is going for quite a few days.
And I don't know if
loud booming.
And I don't know what I mean. Obviously, many of our international fans don't celebrate 4th at all. But
yes,
for people in the U.S., I don't know if it's the same. But everybody buys their fireworks like a week and a half earlier, and so it's just like. Not so much where I live now. In my, used to live by the beach, and people were, I'm assuming, testing them for many nights leading up to the 4th of July. It's almost like the 4th of July was like a bummer. It's like, oh, our fireworks are gone.
It's so funny because like occasionally we'll get comments from overseas people and they're like, man, like this is too, America centric, or like I can't care about this. It's like a very American specific thing. And it's like, I get where you're coming from, and I think it's an understandable sentiment, but let's like, what do you want me to do? Like,
right.
This is, like on some level, like, this is where I live, and this is going to shape how I talk about things.
I went to Europe the summer after my senior year of high school, and when the 4th rank came around, we were in Paris, and we were at our hotel, and then like the guide came in to let us, we were about to get on the bus, and none of us were like thinking or expecting anything. We were just like, that's right, it's the 4th, hey, happy 4th. And she like came in with a little flag, and she was like, We were like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. Woo! Let's go see the Eiffel Tower.
But that's actually, honestly though, that is actually something I would like to experience more. Is those country-specific holidays? I'd love to be at like a cherry blossom festival,
Blood,
or something in Germany or whatever.
That's why
they're so cool.
Bless all of the people in our showcase here. That once a month we do the showcase, and a lot of that's awesome photographs from. Yeah. Even when it's someone of one nationality that is not mine, going to another country, same thing, and experiencing it through that lens. Like,
well, I'm going to take it a step further. I would like to experience every Japanese holiday as intensely as possible.
Like Golden Week, man?
Yeah, I
know. Get a week of this?
I know. All the way that I get to celebrate Golden Week is there's like a PSN sale.
You just play the NES Zelda all week.
This Sizzle, I do think you guys brought the energy, so I appreciate it. This Sizzle is brought to you by some wonderful shout-out to your patrons. If you would like to find out more, it's a $250 tier. Go to patreon.com/easyallies. And for this one, let's do our best Waluigi in honor of Mario Golf. Let's do our best Waluigi. So shout out to Elthanas, Greg TheDarkKnight Kettering, Caleb Togi Crawford, Edsgar, So I'm a Spider, So What, Esdoccal, Nick, Blue, Dave McKilligin, and JessieBlu. Shout out! Blood, I think that was my favorite one. Okay, let's get back into the games.
Waluigi's great in the adventure mode.
Is he?
Wario
what does he do?
Waluigi
That outfit, man.
No.
I'd love to do that outfit for like a Halloween costume, but
Yes.
it's got to be expensive.
Yes. But there are a lot of good outfits in Mario Golf. So Waluigi's great. Bowser's great. All the villains, really, I think.
Toad's hat is...
Toad's is very
good. Got a little vest.
Toad's is very good.
Toad looks very good. Yeah.
Pauline looks great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's talk about... Blood, tell me about Lost Words Beyond the Page.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been meaning to check this game out for quite a while. Finally got into it today since the frame trap crunch.
It's my show, and I definitely experienced the frame trap game crunch. Yeah.
So I think I'm about halfway through it. It seems like it's probably 5 or 6 hours, something like that. Yeah, it's to not sound too much like Huber, but it's intimate and emotional. It's definitely how I put it.
It's so funny because to bring that up, like I love Huber's Huberisms, but in the context of Easy Allies, I think sometimes, like if you say culmination, does the audience think that you're saying the literal meaning of the word, or do they think you're saying the Huber meaning of the word? Yeah.
Right. And so it's kind of indie, small budget. Modus published. Sketchbook Games is the name of the developer.
Appropriate.
And you're just essentially there's essentially two halves of the game. So where you start with is with the little girl's journal, and so pretty much you're walking your way through this story and through narration, and the words write out across the pages of the journal, and you control a little girl who basically platforms on the words.
Oh, cool.
And then they start throwing in other mechanics there to where, okay, some words will they'll be like torn out, and you can like pull a word from one place and then use that as a platform and jump across to get to the end. A lot of the times, as you're going through the things that it's talking about, then these sketches and illustrations will just spring up as like watercolor bleeding across the page, and looks gorgeous. My favorite part about the game is the watercolor imagery. And then they do all of these other little fun mechanics with things. There's one point where talking about like cutting the grass, and all this grass will pop up on the bottom of the page, and you'll grab the word cut and you'll slide it across the grass to chop it all off. Similarly, there's another part where they talk about photographs, and you grab the word remember and like kind of like a squeegee, like go across the photograph to reveal the image. And a little ways in, then it introduces the other side of this, and basically this little girl wants to become a writer. And so she's talking about like what kind of things she wants to write, and she decides to write a fantasy story, and you kind of sort of write it with her. You make different choices along the way, and some of it is kind of basic like character creation. So you pick between 3 different names that the character is going to be named. You pick what kind of color her clothes are going to be.
Is it like, when you say you write it with her, is she like, well, I want to name him Frederick and you want to name him Bartholomew? And then like, is there like a difference of opinion, or does she just kind of go with what you suggest?
There's not a difference of opinion. It's kind of like you're like deciding between like her different thoughts.
I see.
You know,
so it's like
she talks
framed
to
from
you as
her
if you are the
perspective.
journal in a sense.
Gotcha.
You know, and so then those different. A lot of times those different options will kind of have like in blue text next to them, sort of like what she's thinking of, like, oh, this name's more fun, or this name, you know, could mean that or whatever. And then once the story starts up, now you're in a whole other thing. And so there'll still be words that'll show up across the screen in white. But now it's a fully, like, there's no more pages. It's fully like it's side scrolling, but like 3D modeling and stuff like that. And you play as this little girl. I picked Robin for the name.
It's a great name. Robin is a great name.
And she becomes like the guardian of the fireflies. And so your cursor is a firefly.
Okay.
And she also uses words as sort of like your power-ups. And so there will be times when the narration or whatever, there'll be a word that you can grab out of a sentence, and then you can use that word. And so the first word you get is rise. And so you could stand on like a platform and then move rise under the platform, and then the platform will rise up. You can jump off.
Is rise obvious? So like, oh, that's one of those words I can use. Or did you find yourself?
Oh, no, it's very like it's,
okay.
it's again, it's kind of like a cutout kind of thing.
Were there any points that you just like clicked on a word just for funsies and were like, I thought I might be able to use that, but I guess not.
No, like I said, it's visually, it's very clearly communicated.
Are there any words that can have a negative effect or like an unintended effect?
I wouldn't say negative or unintended, but there are things like burn, like break, and then there's also repair. And so I just went through a section where like you break a thing and then you repair the thing to kind of move between different paths in an area. And there's one that's silence that you kind of use for stealth. And so you like put like a silence bubble around your character so that she can sneak up to things that might skitter away or close up. And it goes back and forth between these two things. So, the little girl that's writing, something happens in her family, and it kind of makes everyone kind of uneasy and sad, and so she's trying to process all of this, and she's trying to figure out what she can do, because she's just a little girl, and part of what she decides that what she can do is she can keep working on her story so that she can share the story with her family members. And so you kind of have this interplay of like, okay, what's happening in her life and then what's happening in the story. And it's all pretty cool and pretty interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing with the words is some of them So when you grab a word, some of them she'll write in her journal, and so then you basically open up the journal and grab it whenever you need it.
Mm-hmm.
Others are more temporary.
Gotcha.
Or you might have them for a certain section of a level, and then they'll kind of dissipate.
Huh. It reminds me, and I can't even remember if this is the correct name. Is it Untitled Swan? Is that what it was?
Unfinished
Swan. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I played that game like 8 times.
Yeah, it reminds me of Unfinished Swan, and I think like the point that I'm trying to get at is in Unfinished Swan, a huge appeal was like going to a new area and just seeing like what was going to happen, like what mechanically was going to kind of define this zone of the game. And I think that that's something that smaller games can really excel at is some of them, like What Remains of Edith Finch is a good example of this too, where it's just like, it's not like so many games where it's like, okay, this is the gameplay loop and it's very clearly defined. It's like anything could happen. It's very open-ended. But I feel like sometimes those games, what they struggle with is because there's kind of so much going on mechanically, like it's just, so crammed with ideas that like basic stuff doesn't feel that great. Like you mentioned platforming. Did you feel like, that was smooth and responsive and like easy to perform?
What's weird is I feel like the platforming on the pages and the platforming in the like more realized world is a little bit different in terms of control. But I mean it's not the greatest, and I think it's not necessarily like the focus of it in a way. I mean it's definitely something that you do, but a lot of it is it's interesting because as you move through the world, like the words and the narration continue to happen, and so there will even be parts where like you go up these steps, and you have to hop up to each step, and every step that you hop on, another word appears and calls out and like continues the sentence. So it really is that sense of like participating in the story. And there's another part in a desert where you walk into this tent and she's like, oh, so I can tell from my surroundings that the people that used to live here used to be, and then you have like 3 options. You have like warriors or merchants or philosophers. And I slotted in merchants, and then all of a sudden there was like, these bowls full of, what looked like probably fruit or something that popped up, and these statues of the guy with holding fruit. And then I interact with similar statues like all throughout the rest of the level. So I was like, I know like if I picked one of those other things, it's just decorative, but those statues would have looked different.
Is this getting ported to something else, or is there a sequel to this, or is there some game that we saw during E3? So we saw a lot of independent games that you were like, oh, that reminds me of this.
There's a game that we saw at E3 called Letters that reminded me of this game. The weird thing with the release of this is last year it came out on Stadia, and then this year it came out on more consoles.
So it came out this year.
That's not, dude. That poker face was you confused me for a second.
Is the when you're communicating with the girl, is it all voice acted or is it just text based?
Oh, it's mostly voice acted.
Okay.
Cool. Yes. So
how is the voice acting? Like, is it?
It's good. Like I said, like it's emotional because like you do get that sense of, again, just questioning.
Right.
What's going on? Like, what am I supposed to do? And
sure.
Because I don't want to spoil the situation itself, but
yeah.
You really do get that sense of somebody that is, just sharing those intimate thoughts in a journal that they wouldn't tell to anybody else.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like a really, really cool game. Sorry, you probably mentioned this. What platform are you playing it on again?
I'm playing the PS4 version on PS5.
Okay.
But I think it's on Switch and PC and Xbox as well, but I don't know exactly.
Yeah, I want to give this a spin. Awesome. Boy, it's a Switch-centric episode because the other game that I've been playing, I've also been playing on Switch, and that is Disgaea 6.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like this is also a hard game for me to talk about because on one hand, I'm having a great time. But I think I'm having a great time in the same way that I would have a great time with like pretty much any Disgaea game. And that's because like there really isn't anything that I feel like is directly competing with Disgaea. And that is that might be a confusing statement, I think, if you're not familiar at all with the series or you've never played it, where you're like, oh, it's it's a turn-based strategy game. Like those are in some ways like seeing a resurgence. And it's like, well, yes, but also no. Like, there is a certain brand of insanity in Disgaea that I don't think anything is really replicating yet. I'm about 6.5 hours in, and my main character is like level 530. To kind of give you an idea of, and I think the cap in this one, I think they raised the cap, so it's like I think the cap is 99,999,099 is like the level cap that you could get in.
It's like lira. Like the currency. You're just like, what?
Yeah.
I have 10,000 what?
And it's like you're hitting dudes, and it's calculating like tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of damage. And big numbers are definitely like a hallmark of the series. But Brandon, like there are mechanics in this where I'm like, you would just lose your mind.
Yay.
Like, not only can you like grind out your characters to your heart content, but you can grind out characters by going inside of items.
Yes, this. Yes,
yeah,
I've heard of this.
Yeah. So it's the item world, and like you're like, oh, I want to power up this weapon, and to do that, I go inside of the item, and I am going through floors and fighting, randomized maps and enemies and things.
Blood, what's wrong with me?
Yeah. No, I have that. I don't know, gene in me as well, where like there's so many numbers going up in Disgaea, and it's like extremely satisfying. But I think in a way, so like comparing it to the last entry, Disgaea 5, I do think there are some things that are just like strictly stronger in this game, where like again you're kind of going against a big bad, but I think the characters are like a little more charming. Like I think they're always charming in some way, but like your main dude is this zombie, and your companion is this zombified dog who used to be a great sage. And like the zombie, your main character is just like an asshole. Like he's just a dick. He doesn't care about anybody. He's rude to everybody. And he keeps going after this god of destruction, and he just keeps dying. And he just keeps getting reincarnated. And so he's trying to kind of fight against this god. He keeps losing, but he gets stronger every time he's reincarnated. And you'll reincarnate in these like ridiculous worlds. Like one of the worlds that you go into, there's this king that thinks everything that can be solved with money, and then you get reincarnated into a musical world, and there's this princess that's always singing, and it's just there is like a lot of great irreverence that I don't think is for everybody, but I actually think for the type of humor that it does, it's done like pretty well. Like I find it charming and entertaining. Like the item world that I'm talking about, you have these, you're going through it and you don't know what's going to happen, and so you might go through like an optional door. And what my favorite moment that's happened in the game so far is I go and I like apparently stumble into this demon bank, right? And it just feels like a chance encounter, and I go up to the lady and she's like, "Are you sticking me up?" And then I talk to her, and she's like, "Okay, fine, here you go. Here's like, 5,000 hell, the currency." And then I'm like, I'm just going to talk to her again. And she's like, "Don't push your luck." And then all of a sudden I'm in battle with like these creatures that I just cannot kill. And they just annihilate me, and I get a game over, and I lose all my item world progress that I had at that point. And so
that kind of reminds me of going after Charon in Hades.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think that is, I think Hades is like a weirdly appropriate comparison. And I think the other thing that Disgaea 6 benefits from is it's like, this is the sixth, there's more than six, but the sixth mainline Disgaea, and it's like all of these mechanics that have been kind of like built up to this point are like again here, and it's just like there's just so much you can do. It's like if you really want to go crazy, like there's so much customization that you can do with your characters. You can just tweak everything, and so there's a lot to dig into, and there's a lot going on. And I'm having a great time. I really am. But it's like with how much time there is between these games, like there's been a long time between Disgaea 5 and Disgaea 6. Like there really isn't. It's not a dramatic evolution by any means. Like, I don't know that I could recommend you play this over Disgaea 5 in terms of, like, I don't think that there's a lot new here. And again, I think it's kind of saved by Disgaea kind of carving out this very singular space in terms of strategy. I think that helps it, but it's not a dramatic revolution. And I think the biggest thing that Disgaea 6 can kind of trumpet is this is the first one to feature fully 3D models. So the characters are not 2D sprites anymore. They're fully 3D models, and they have a very charming look to them. But again, I'm playing it on Switch, and it defaults to like graphics mode, and the frame rate is just a mess. And so I was like, well, I'll do performance mode, and I bump it down to performance mode, and it's like, this is like hilariously blurry. Like this robs it of all of the charm that these models inherently have. Thankfully, there's a balance mode. And it feels like a compromise between the two, where it's like, okay, I think, some of the charm and detail of these models is still present, but it doesn't run like garbage. But it's still like, you look at it and it's like, God, you're crying out for some like anti-aliasing. Like it just, it's such a shame, because again, kind of going back to my Monster Hunter Stories 2 comparison is like, this is not technically demanding. Like, you're not doing anything here where it's like, okay, well, I can see why the frames are dropping. And again, like, you'll do a special attack with one of your characters, like that king that I was talking about, where he's like, everything can be solved with money. One of his attacks is called the King's Cannon, and you're just literally shooting like fine things at your enemy. It's just like gold-plated things. You're just pummeling him with it, and it's like that ridiculousness is there, and it's present, and it's charming, but it's just undermined by the fact that it's like, it doesn't feel technically up to snuff. And you're like, this is also coming to PC, and so maybe those problems won't be as prevalent there. But to kind of fight against that argument, this is the perfect Switch game. You know what I mean? Like, you absolutely want to play Disgaea on Switch, because it's like, oh, I have 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I'll do, some item world grinding, or, I'll just like check out, like, I have some events. I can talk to my characters in kind of the hub world. And so it's like the perfect portable game. And it is so weird that I feel like the performance is so bad that you definitely need to talk about it. In kind of a frustrating way. But yeah, I don't know. It's also one of those games that I feel like is hard to recommend, where it's like, if you enjoy Disgaea, I definitely think you will get a similar, like almost identical satisfaction out of this game. But as I was talking about, like, there's so many mechanics that it's like, I wonder if I showed this to somebody that's never played it, if they would just be overwhelmed. Or like, I guess if you're willing to grind, it doesn't really matter, because you can just kind of like brute force your way through the story. I don't know. I'd be curious to see how somebody completely uninitiated would feel. But I like it. I'm having a good time. There are significant problems. Brandon, it's funny, because you and I feel like, are kind of revisiting this series at the exact same time, because I have also been playing this game a little bit, and that is the original Fable.
Mm-hmm. The original?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Remastered, which I never checked out.
I would say this game holds up surprisingly well.
Parts of it, yeah. The parts I thought would hold up are holding up. And that's what I've always thought about Fable, is that like there's such a charm to it, and I love the music. I love exploring the world. But especially the first one is so rigid in some ways.
Sure.
It's funny because you have all this moral flexibility, and you have it's kind of like getting back to the yellow arrow buttons for the camera in GoldenEye 007. It's like going back to this, and it's like, how did the combat work? Oh, right. Like, this button is just the sword, and this button's the bow, and this button's magic. And
boy, it's extremely simple. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm just lightning. That's just what I do. Like, I don't really have a lot of versatility with my magic, but and it's like in a Final Fantasy 2 way. It's so straightforward. It's like you shoot a lot of arrows, you level that up, and you get a general XP from enemies. But the more you physically do stuff, you can get more of that XP as well, and then upgrade those specific
orbs,
abilities.
The colored orbs that.
There is a great. I was hoping this would hold up, and it actually does, which is surprising because, especially companies like Naughty Dog have made such big leaps and bounds in the PS3 and PS4 era in animation. But I remember equipping a greatsword in the original Fable, and I couldn't use it, but he still held it. And he would just like drag it behind him. And I'm like, oh, it's kind of the game being like, he doesn't have a physique, yet for you to use that sword. But even like I remember, and this was Xbox, so this is many a gen ago, I remember like attacking, if I'm attacking this person, then I want to attack blood, it doesn't automatically just kind of snap me around. It kind of accounts for the fact that my sword's already over here. So like my character will turn toward you, but has to like swing the sword in that direction. So like where the character was going and where the weapon was going felt like two different weights. And I was like, wow. I remember at the time being like, this is kind of kid's gloves a little bit. It's very, it feels like you're playing a fairy tale, but at the same time, like I got like headshots earlier today. I was playing a little bit before we shot this, and got a guy with a headshot. And his head rolled off and just rolled down the hill with like leaving a blood trail. And I'm like, this is a weird Monty Python,
right?
Right. The little girl wants me to collect dolls for her, but then I'm also like,
well, even the teaser of the new one, you get the fairy
bandits
flying around and then frog.
And I think they definitely leaned into that more with Fable 2 and 3. Got a little more adult.
Are you playing the enhanced edition?
Yeah.
It's funny because I'm also playing the enhanced edition,
and I didn't before. And
yes,
I played Fable a lot.
Same.
Because I had to play Evil and all that stuff.
It's like, in some ways, like the enhanced edition looks really good, but the faces are like terrifying
because they're really good, but the animation still like PS2, Xbox, and so it's very bizarre. And there's some close-ups where they're just these really, like,
very dead-eyed.
Faces. Can be a little creepy.
But you mentioned the Monty Python sort of
like
comedy.
a Terry Pratchett kind of,
I think that's why I like had the impulse to say like I think this holds up is because it kind of like I was saying with Disgaea is like I play so many RPGs and like nothing has really captured that Fable vibe. Yeah. And I think to illustrate what I'm talking about, there was this side quest that just like tickled me. I just loved it, and it's very early on. And this guy is like, hey, I want somebody to like date my daughter, and she like likes this very specific style of hair. So go and like change your hair, and then he like keeps sending you back and forth, and he keeps having you do like ridiculous things to yourself, like go get this mustache, and then you end up finishing the quest after doing this like I don't know, like 4 or 5 times. I don't remember how many it is exactly, and you come back and he's just like, you idiot, like there is no daughter. Like I just am amazed that I got somebody to be a clown. Thank you for entertaining me. And it's just like, you asshole. And it's just like, it's such a fun, weird quest. And that purely focuses on like kind of the goofiness of Fable and how you can customize your character. And it's funny, like you make yourself look terrible and then you like go into a place and like they just start laughing at you,
Yes.
And that kind of stuff I think really kind of gives this game some vitality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I was curious to examine going back and playing this game now was what is Fable? Like what can they still retain? Because I remember the kind of Toontown-ish, curvature to just the design of the world. Things are like a little off kilter in a whimsical way. I remember the writing. I remember the music for sure, because I've listened to the soundtrack on repeat for, ever since the game first came out. Really, really good score. All the Fable games have great music. But I was like, does the gameplay hold up? Is there anything? And I think one of the major things from just a pure mechanic level that I'm like, I can't remember really any other RPG that does this is like emotes in a single player RPG.
Right.
Have a value,
yes.
Are kind of fun. And even in something like Dragon Age, it would be fun after something's dead to just be like, yes. And like, if you're in proximity to somebody in your party, they'll react to that, or like you could boast, or like if you, get intoxicated, or like just have moments where like, I'm not changing the story, but like the people around me will react. Ratchet and Clank does such an amazing job of like you go into an area and something happens and everyone in the area reacts. Like it actually happens to not just the environment but the people in it. And so it's fun to like I was remodeling my house back in Oakvale and just hit. I finally leveled up to the ability that I wanted, which was you just push everybody away from you. And I got that and like accidentally hit the B button and just broke the windows, destroyed all the furniture. And it's my house, but I like hit a guy that was like walking by the door and I got in trouble and a guard ran in and I just like reloaded the save. But it's like, that's fun. Like a world that's Cyberpunk's kind of fragile in that way, in a bad way. Like it's pretty easy to break Cyberpunk. But it would be neat to see the emotions and you know the way that they react to even just like the way you're dressed or like a fart or something. It's there is a strange value in there, even though it is very kind of Sesame Street sometimes.
It's funny that you bring up Cyberpunk because I've always had like this weird problem with Fable because I remember I played Fable 1 pretty close to when it launched, and I remember reading like the hype around Fable.
Oh yeah,
and I just
it's out of control. Yeah.
Maybe I'm imagining this, but I feel like I remember reading like, oh, you're going to be able to like plant a tree and like watch it grow.
Yep.
And it was like
that was like the headline.
There was like this grandiosity with Fable that it was being talked about. That like, when you actually played it, like of course you're going to be disappointed. You know what I mean? Like, and I do definitely think that Fable, you can definitely see like. There is like a roboticness to it. Like you emote and then it's like, oh, okay, like they have this canned response.
It's very wobbly.
And like I remember playing Fable 3 and it's like you get to be the king and it's like the way that translates is not what you have in your mind. So that's kind of disappointing. Mm-hmm. And so like I feel like expectation versus experience has always kind of worked against me for Fable, but now revisiting it and not having that expectation, I do think I can kind of appreciate smaller things like the emotes that you were talking about in a way that I couldn't before, I guess. Yeah. It's very charming. And yeah, the combat just has nothing to it. I mean, it's just like the sword fighting, you're just like mashing away. But I do think just like playing around with the townspeople and it's just like you can like get romantically involved with anybody you want. It's like you can buy any of these houses, and like if you're in the mood for like some like sandbox shenanigans, I do think it could be entertaining.
Dare I say, non-frustrating when you bring somebody else in a game, basically Dead Rising, what am I to escort quests. They're pretty charming. Again, there's a lot of people that you have to follow. Like, I like that there are like lots of merchants. So like when you're out on the road, like you'll see people that will sell stuff and flip out. And if like you just happen to stroll by when all those bees like respawned, like they'll all be pestering some guy and you run over and kill them and he'll cheer, maybe follow behind you as you're leaving the zone. And it's like, it's neat. Granted, those zones are very, very small. Again, it's like many generations ago, but I can't. It's the kind of attention paid in a storytelling world that it's not like, oh, I remember then when this game last gen did this. Like, I can't recall any other game that put that much attention. And I'm sure something like a Deus Ex rivals it in terms of like world building. It's just specifically that, this world that just does not take itself that seriously.
Yes.
Still has villains. Still has threats and stuff and like and spooky parts actually from what I recall. But it'd be fun in the new one if you just go full warlock and you got horns and everything, and there's like little kids in the main town following you, and you're just like and they all freak out and run away. Like it'd be neat to be able to express yourself that way.
Yeah, my dip back into Fable has made me really excited for the new one, just because what they can do on current generation hardware, but like like we've been saying, like. That not taking itself too seriously, that very specific, very British humor, I hope they can recapture.
But if we get that like behind the scenes development sitting at their desk looking out the windows on the side of the building, if we get that trailer and they're like, so we long believe that the combat in Fable was terrible, so we upped it, I'd be like, great, that's fine. I have no nostalgia there. Like whatever you need to do to clean it up, it's just the writing and the expressing I think are the two things that like keep those two. Those work.
How much of the work in terms of like texture detail and stuff from like Forza Horizon 4, I wonder, will cross into that?
It'd be very I could see them doing this where there's like a side quest in the new Fable where you go through a portal and suddenly you're like in a car, I
don't mean be in a car, but I mean there's just so much detail and like the walls and the
you'll be able to like collect a little sports car that you can put up on your like in your house.
Or like they'll
so
be
I'm curious,
they'll be
like how much of
portraits.
that they pull over and then like, okay, make this fantasy.
Phil Spencer's in Fable. Okay,
Man,
I mean this is happening. Like,
that's something that's kind of exciting about Forza Horizon 5. Like I'm looking forward to it because I think the Horizon games are fun, but it's also a game like you're getting in that like almost PlayStation 2 sense where you're like, it just looks so real. I have to see it.
yeah.
You know, that very like game magazine kind of hype is definitely there. And what's also hype is this HOTTAKE. And boy, it's kind of a perfect segue because we were talking about Forza Horizon 5 and how good it, is presenting itself. And there, like I said, there's kind of been this running theme. You know, we talked about it with Mario Golf. We talked about it with Monster Hunter Stories 2. We talked about it with Disgaea 6, where it's just like I'm playing these games on Switch, and I'm just like, come on. Like, I wish you looked better. I wish you ran better.
Gotta get that Switch Pro.
Right. And so the Switch Pro is a very interesting thing to kind of bring up, and I will incorporate into this discussion. But this is coming from a place of love. Like, I genuinely love the Switch. I love Nintendo games, and I have gotten so much use and so much out of my Switch. But now I almost feel frustrated by it, where it's just like, you clearly like, your age is becoming more apparent with each passing day, and that's like a frustration that I'm dealing with. And obviously the Switch Pro is coming, but I don't necessarily think that's like a cure-all.
Sure.
But before we get into that, before we get into the Switch Pro element of it, I want some perspective here. Am I too hard on the Switch? Like, when you run into these games or these ports and they're just not performing well on Switch, is that something that bothers you on a personal level? Or is it not something that's really come up that much?
Yeah, it's strange because the specific games that you're talking about, I haven't been playing yet, and so like I said, Rise I think looked really good.
Yes.
But I also think that with the Switch is like the size of my notebook, right? Like it's this,
Yeah.
And so there's only so much I expect out of that, considering the PlayStation 5. Just I can't put it in a backpack, so it's a huge beast of a machine, and my PC is even larger. So I definitely think there are certain expectations that come there, and the fact that it's 4.5 years now.
Right.
That it's been out, at that small size, at the already being somewhat behind. So we're getting to that point to where a lot of games on any system you would start to see some things struggling as people like try to push the edge. It's just funny because in Switch's case, people aren't really pushing the edge in the way that you typically think of because it's a handheld spec system. So
it's funny because I wonder if my agitations are enhanced by the fact that for all of 2020, I just didn't leave my apartment. You know what I mean? Like where the portability of the Switch, because normally in a given year for like different work things or, just going home or whatever, I'm usually like flying, I feel like 5 or 6 times, maybe more in a given year. And, I'm there playing my Switch. And I think there is some still like magic when you're on a plane and playing like Mario Odyssey or Breath of the Wild or whatever it may be, where I just didn't get to have that. Like, it's not that I didn't use handheld mode at all in the last year, but my reasons for, like, I was primarily docked because there was just no reason for me not to be, really.
I think my take on this actually is one of the things in my, like late GT days and Easy Allies days that like I've come around like almost full 180. Because I remember a lot of this discourse started around the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 4 Pro, when a lot of people were like, this game just can't. This doesn't
control,
run.
Man, yeah.
This just doesn't run. And like, even before that, like I remember people mentioning stuff, and Spider-Man, I think, came out before Control, and so there was like a question for like loading and stuff. And I was very much like, oh, well, this is just kind of what happens in this industry. And like, I kind of didn't think really that it was as bad of a problem as it was, or that every now and then we would get a game that just, you are doing yourself a disservice like, for checking that out. And now I'm at the point where like I got Amanda Phoenix Rising on Switch for her birthday for Christmas, and she really, really liked playing it. But when she first booted it up, I was like so excited. I'm like, oh, you're gonna make time for it? Cool. I don't want to like make you play games, but I enjoyed this game, so if you're gonna check it out. And I saw it on Switch and was like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I bought this for you as a present. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
And I love my wife, and she was like, "What are you talking? This is like fantastic." And I was like, "This does not look good." Like this.
Yeah. And because Phoenix is Immortals is a gorgeous game.
Beautiful.
It's a beautiful game.
And granted,
yes.
I'm going from PlayStation 5 to Switch, but I was
Yeah.
still like, wow, they didn't get creative at all in terms
Yeah.
of how they, tried to represent this. And it's just so crazy to like have Breath of the Wild and have this game come along, like 2, 3, 4 years later, and like, yikes. And so, yeah, we're really at a point where I think it was like you're saying about the size, like what you have expectations for. I'm not so much like, yeah, it didn't run that well. There's not a lot of content, or the frame rate's not great. I'm more surprised, like when we do get a Rise or we do get an Odyssey, where it's like, well, what's this special sauce? What happened? Like, how did they? Is this time? Is this maybe a knowledge that they're not sharing with third party or not sharing with other partners?
Right. Yeah, because like when Doom or Witcher 3 or something comes out on Switch, I'm just amazed they were able to make that happen.
Yeah,
I'm amazed that Doom Eternal exists on the Switch, and it's playable, even though it looks like it's probably running at 480p or something. But you can play that game.
So, Blood, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's also an element that I wanted to include in this discussion. And I do think the lifetime of the Switch is very relevant here, because like I actually played a good bit of Witcher 3 on the Switch, and it does not look great. It doesn't look, the way Witcher looks on other platforms, but it was kind of magical, because you were like, I can't believe this has happened. But I feel like there have been enough I can't believe this is happening moments where like now I've reverted to like, okay, but yes, now I just want it to look good. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like done a full circle.
Apex Legends, man.
Yeah, Apex Legends. It's like I have not played Apex Legends on Switch, but it's like, why would I, based on what everyone has said?
For the person, and again, I'm not making dispersions based on who was able to locate or afford what console or whatever. But it's like if Switch is your only console and you don't have a PC, then sure, yeah, like get Apex Legends on Switch. But otherwise, I cannot think of a reason.
Right.
Even if I had a friend, I'd be like,
Right.
Yeah. Well, and Monster Hunter Stories 2 in particular, it's just. This is a game that seems to be made for the Switch. Yeah. Yes, there's a PC version, but the Switch version should run well. And whatever spec and engineering and engine you have to do for that should be like the primary focus, because that seems to be the platform you're promoting this game for.
And it's funny because you talk about like Monster Hunter Stories on mobile, Brandon, and it like looks amazing and runs amazing on phone. Yeah. And so yeah. And to kind of bring the Switch Pro in, and I'm a little bit hesitant here because we don't officially know exactly what this machine is.
Yeah, it's not a real thing.
Yeah, we don't
There will be something, but what it is, nobody knows.
Don't get mad. But we just don't have all the details yet, so we don't know how things are going to work. But I think speculatively, looking at the Switch Pro, I'm like, I do think it's needed, and I can't wait for it. But I also don't think it's like going to exactly fix this problem that I have, because, presumably games that work on the Switch Pro are still going to release for the Switch Lite and regular Switch, right? And so it's like it's going to be kind of this like this PS4 to PS4 Pro and Xbox One to
Xbox One X.
Which one is it?
I know.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Xbox One X. And so you're gonna have that problem. And I think of like Control, right? And people like base console performance like wasn't great. You think of like Cyberpunk, for instance. And so it's like, are we just going to run into that problem with the Switch Pro, where it's like it runs decently to well on Switch Pro, but it like doesn't on Switch? And so that it's like that creates anger and confusion, and then like people have a question. You have that constant question of like, does this run okay on my regular Switch or Switch Lite? And it's like I feel like that's just kind of a frustrating problem to have inherently, right?
Yeah, but I think I'm hoping, and we'll see what actually happens with the Switch. But I'm hoping that in a sense, that's just the way that the industry is moving forward, and we're just going to have to, that's just going to be the new reality, right? Because you look at the Series X, and it's like, it's all there.
Yeah.
It's like all the way back to original Xbox, I can download games and play them.
Right.
And so And a lot of the new games that come out for Series X, we can still play that on Xbox One.
Right.
And the performance is what the performance is. So I think that's sort of it. You're just going to have to accustomize yourself to, we're not going to have new libraries of things moving forward, hopefully. Mm-hmm. We're just going to add onto them. And if you have an older device, you have an older device, and it's not going to run things as well as your newest device.
Yeah. And maybe this is just a little bit of like getting older and like jadedness kicking in. But like I'm at a point where it's like, if you buy a game for full price, it should run well. Like that should just be a guarantee. And it's like, this is not a Nintendo specific problem. Like the Ninja Gaiden Master Collection, the PC port, it's like, this is just unacceptable. Like this shouldn't happen, where it's like, you can't even change the resolution in the game. Like you have to go into the game's files to change the resolution. It's like, these are ancient games. Like this is just unacceptable. And it's, I don't know. I just wish there was a more unified standard across platforms. Because, like, I get bummed out. Like, sometimes I'll buy a Switch version or, like, a PC version or some version of a game, and it's like, oh, this just happens to be worse than the others. And it's like,
right.
On some level, right, like, I don't buy a Switch game expecting it to look like a PS5 game or a PC game. That's not what I'm saying. But it should be, like, if I buy a game on any platform, there should be some standard of stability, I feel like.
Right, yeah. It's a weird thing because as the Switch shows, things are more scalable than ever.
Right.
But, yeah, the scalability, it's hard to figure out, like, where do those corners need to be cut. And then with things like with the, once we see games really start taking advantage of the higher speed SSDs, well, that's a whole other, like, how do you can't port that to the Switch, or can you, or what do? You just walk across the field and then like stop loading. Like, I don't know.
I think the other element that kind of terrifies me about the Switch Pro is availability of the consoles themselves, and like I've just been trying to get Metroid Dread the special edition, and I just can't. And like somebody like forwarded me a Mario or a Wario 64 link, and it's like, okay, this dude tweeted about this like a minute ago, and it's already sold out. And it's not just Metroid that this has been a problem with. Obviously, people have been struggling to get GPUs. They've been struggling to get PlayStation 5. They've been struggling to get Xbox Series X. And like, you just know that this is immediately going to be a problem with the Switch Pro, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a guarantee. And it's like, then you run into the problem where it's like, okay, no one can get their hands on this. Scalpers have eaten them up and should be punished. But then you run into the awkward situation, right, where it's like, okay, no one can get a hold of this. Theoretically, let's say like Breath of the Wild 2 is out. It's like, do I want to play this now, or do I want to wait until I can properly experience it like with better hardware? And I just feel like there are all of these
Miles Morales
questions.
right now. I mean, that's like all PS4 owners are
right.
Yeah.
And I guess, just out of curiosity, I just played Miles Morales on PS5. I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. How was the PS4 version? Did you guys hear?
I did not hear any glaring complaints. But they didn't have as merry of a Christmas as you did, Bloodworth.
Yeah.
On their PS4s.
Right.
But yeah, I mean,
I heard from Insomniac it runs great.
But yeah, in terms of like availability, it's nuts to me that I feel like we still haven't seen anyone just create a waiting list.
Well, I think Sony has done that with the PS5, where they
open up these queues, but I don't quite understand how that works.
Sure.
But I feel like on some level you should be able to just go to a shop and like put my name on the list, and if you're number 50, then okay, whenever it comes in,
right.
All right, you confirm your order, and confirm, and your credit card's charged, and it comes through. Obviously, there's millions of people that want these, so it'd be a huge logistical task, but it seems like somebody should be taking advantage of that.
Yeah, I feel like the point that you're getting at, right? Like, on some level, when demand is so high, there's only so much that the supply can do. Like, on some level, there's going to be a shortage, but based on just the absolute mess that has been going on, like, there has to be some sort of, there has to be something we can do to make this, like, a little better, is I think what you're getting at, and I totally agree.
Yeah, because it's just like, they're available. 5 minutes later, they're not available, and it's just this thing, and just put me on a list now.
Right.
When they're available, charge me.
Right. And it's like
I shouldn't have to be like waking up at 7 a.m. every morning to find out if they're available or not.
It shouldn't be like I have it in my cart, and as I'm checking out, you take it from my cart and say it's no longer available. It's like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Totally, I agree with you. It's like even if it's like, okay, I know I have to wait for 6 months, but in 6 months' time I'm guaranteed to get one. Like that would be better. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just speculating, and I'm just very doubtful that like there's some kind of value to them, like seeing people dashing out in spurts, kind of controlling like, okay, go now, and then like had that fervor somehow creates excitement around the console, rather than if they had some kind of back end system. It's like, oh no, everyone's just waiting. There's no like exciting time when all of a sudden a bunch of people have new ones.
I feel like
I don't believe that. That was
in
literally
retail,
when both of you looked at me. That was the thought.
In a big box store. That makes sense, right? To have people rush in, and then because they're going to buy batteries and all whatever. But online,
video for the evening news.
You're going to buy things when you want to online. Like and with this kind of thing, you're going to buy it as fast as you can, and not worry about buying anything else because you want to check out now.
Well, I guess you do bring up a good point where it's like from our end, from the consumer's perspective, it would be so nice if this was like easier and simpler, and there were better ways for people to get the products that they wanted. But from the like manufacturer's perspective, like as long as it sells, do they give a shit? Like, is there really any impetus for them to improve this? Like for as much as the PS5 and the Xbox Series X have been in short supply, I don't think that has like harmed those brands in any significant way.
Oh, the opposite. They was the fastest selling console in the history of consoles. So they figured it out. They made enough of those suckers, but. But
you have to think on some level, right? Because I think a lot of the praise that Microsoft has gotten recently, right, with backwards compatibility and Game Pass and just like these small things that they're doing, and sometimes very big things that they're doing that make the consumer experience better, like that has to like curry some favor, right? Like. Mm-hmm. Like maybe there is no like huge consequence if they don't do those things, if they don't make it easier, but there has to be like some benefit, even if it's small. Right. So you would think like one of these companies would maybe become a leader in that sense.
And it is tough to get a Series X and S depending on where you want to, your retailer and when you try to get that stuff. But there are 3 brand new Xbox Series X controllers based on Space Jam that I saw from an article on their website. I was doing research for the podcast.
I think controllers are actually fairly available.
Yeah. So,
from when I was looking around, because I'm going to be controller shopping for studio soon. But
nice.
Yeah.
Fun things that you also have to get up very early for. Comic-Con apartments or Comic-Con hotel rooms.
Oh, gosh.
I remember at Defy Media, literally the entire company all like at the same time were like, click! And we got nothing. It's just like, whoa, we had a whole building all on the same team trying to make it happen. Couldn't do it.
Dude.
That's insane.
I have never done Comic-Con because of how insane it is. And it's like, it's such a bummer because I do love conventions, and I've had so many great memories of conventions, but there's also been times like Anime Expo is just too big now. Like there's just too many people to properly enjoy it.
I have a friend that is always going to concerts. He's always going to weird festivals and stuff like that. And so it's like I've gotten up early in the morning to help him try to get fish tickets and stuff. And there is like a weird magic to it. Like there is a way. Like he just always manages to go. Like he always manages to get, and not just because he has like all these weird, gross scalper friends. Like he just somehow manages to.
I don't know.
Hang up on the right people or something. I don't know. The magic touch.
Are we ready for some emails?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This one comes in from Mban, who wants to talk about progress in games. We have a couple Mario Golf inspired emails. Sup stick wigglers and button mashers. Reading the comment section on the recent Friend Code episode about Mario Golf Super Rush has me thinking, is unlocking playable characters in a new game rather than having them all unlocked to begin with really the kind of progression we should be asking for in our games? So many comments were complaining about them all being unlocked from the start instead of being rewards for beating tournaments against the character or just specific challenges because we've been trained to expect that sort of loot. But isn't it better having a large base roster all unlocked from the start? Lots of modern games opt for this instead. That means when friends get together to play the game on release night, or especially further down the road, there won't be any worry about someone having a completed save file with all the characters unlocked already. So everyone can grab their favorites without hassle. It also tends to be a major boon for games in a tournament setting. I understand the desire for some kind of meaningful progression you feel as a player, but should playable characters really be the carrot to dangle there? What do y'all think? And if not characters, then what meaningful unlocks would y'all recommend instead to keep a game's progression feeling meaningful? Very good question.
Yeah, in Adventure you get new clubs that have weird powers and new outfits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would kind of like. I hadn't thought about that before, but I think in Mario Golf you could. It would have benefited from maybe splitting the difference. Specifically, like I said, Wario and Waluigi are kind of fun in the campaign. That'd be neat if they just specifically them and maybe Mario. Like we're not. Actually, that'd be weird if you couldn't play Mario right away. But if they had, an assortment and like you unlock those as well.
Yeah.
But I guess I didn't think about it because I was like, there's the cast. And I didn't think like if you restrict that. I don't know, it just popped in my head, but like Mortal Kombat is such an incredible progression. I remember even just Injustice 2, I was like, I gotta pull myself away from this.
Sure.
I'm unlocking the most innocuous the outfit pieces and just
right.
loving every little trickle.
Ooh,
of
costumes
gear.
would be a good one.
That and in Mortal Kombat 11, it's like it's fun because it like dramatically changes how you look.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like these iconic
even
characters.
just color. Even just like swapping up different color patterns and stuff.
Because the thing that this reminds me of, the best example is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Because I had already played Mario Kart 8. I wasn't going to go back through that loop and unlock all these kart parts and stuff all over again. So it's any time we play that game, whether it's online or whatever, and then I go back to the menu, it's like, you unlock this thing. It's like, oh yeah, cool, right.
Sure.
And then but on the other side, it's like I'll try to like put my cart together. It's like, man, I feel like the combination is not quite right, and it's because I haven't unlocked all that stuff. I haven't taken that time. I'm just picked up Deluxe to, keep playing it with friends and stuff.
I think about my time with Super Smash Bros. Ultimate and how it came at like the perfect moment where it came out in December and I was going home, and so it's like I just got to like play a bunch of Smash Ultimate by myself, and like seeing that roster slowly unlock and get bigger and doing those fights with those characters.
It's an event anytime.
It is. It's like, yes, it's so much fun and so awesome. But I think like hypothetically, what if I got that and then like my friends and I just wanted to play all the characters right away? Like if I was in like a more of a party situation, how I would have felt. And it's like, well, it probably would have irritated me. But so I think the way to split the difference is like just have a cheat code. You know what I mean? Like just have a cheat code where it's like if you enter it, you can unlock all the characters.
Just a thing in the options, like at the very bottom.
Yeah.
Or like
reset or something.
Options might make sense, but I think too like maybe separate it versus like single player versus multiplayer.
Right.
If you're going in and you're playing multiplayer, it's like all of them are. And if you're going single player, well, you got to unlock if you want to play that guy.
Because I do think unlockable characters are really enticing, and I think in something like Mario, the idea of getting unlockable characters, like what you could get like crazy characters or like super obscure characters that could be really fun to work for. Or
you could get Rose Gold Peach.
Yeah.
Even just like a little marker next to the character that shows that I've beaten them online or in single player or something. Like even just something dumb like that, I would still be obsessed if I was like, oh, I still haven't beaten that one character.
I mean, it might even still be cool, for that mechanic, because you can, get those challenges even after multiplayer matches in Smash.
Yeah.
That could still happen, right?
Right.
You could still do that. And it's like, hey, here they are, unlock them for single player, but you can play them as much as you want in multiplayer.
And that's actually a really good point to bring up because I talked about like that party setting with Smash. It's great that you do have that alternate way to unlock them because when you're playing with your friends, then it becomes an event. Like it's happened where it's like, oh, wait, we were going to do another match, but Isabelle is challenging us. All right, let's see if you can beat her, dude. Like that, it kind of works both ways as a satisfying solo experience and group experience. I think a lot of games could learn a lot from Smash. Like it's amazing that Smash does so many of these like weirdly specific things that like no one else seems to copy, and I don't understand it. Yeah. Our next email comes in from Beaks, which is a fun name to say. We got another Mario Golf question. I think you're going to like this one, Brandon. Beaks says, "Hey, Ben and Allies, Mario Golf was one of my most anticipated games of the year, and it has been a blast jumping into it. Been a little disappointed with how much there is to do, but overall it's been real fun. The game has made me realize that golf games are one of my favorite genres in all of gaming. I really want to jump back into Toadstool Tour for a bit, and I'm really looking forward to trying out Everybody's Golf. Everybody's Golf is great. I recently was able to purchase a PS5, as I have very fond memories of Hot Shots Golf on the PSP. But what about you guys? What are some of the games that you played that reminded you of a genre you loved or first got you started in that genre? Thanks for all the jolly vibes."
I mean, like Mario Golf on 64 was just so, like, I remember, like, I think I was the only one of all my 64 friends who was just like, this game.
Really?
And then,
Man, Mario Golf on 64 is great.
And yeah, the GameCube version, of course. I think I might have tried one of the mobile games, but it was really just both of those,
right?
That were so very specific. And it was just something about, I can't think of another genre, even in sports, where it's like, I would be hanging out with friends and none of us would be paying attention. And then all of a sudden it's just like, what? Oh, okay. Well, shut up, everybody. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. What were you saying? And like just in that 12-second period, you were so completely laser focused on what you were doing and you were competing against like 7 other people.
Right.
And then you were just back to, talking about nonsense for 20 minutes. And then, all of a sudden it's my turn again. And like I can't think of another multiplayer game that like has that kind of pace. So that's what always
I can, and it's one that I still think is pretty cool if you actually are in the situation for it. It's just Wii bowling, man.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Passing around that controller for Wii bowling.
Mm-hmm.
But that came to mind as like another, like I'm leapfrogging off all kinds of stuff. But talking about Mario Golf, even before Toadstool Tour, Monkey Golf and Super Monkey Ball and Monkey Bowling, love both of those. Like those are really like they're more fleshed out than should even be called a mini game. There's a lot going with those modes, and so I'm really looking forward to like that collection, that Monkey Ball collection that's coming out, because so many cool, crazy, good mini games that I don't even really care about going back to like actual Monkey Ball. I want all that other stuff.
Well, man, I don't know if we have room to get into it here, but like Monkey Ball is like unrealized potential in a way that doesn't make any sense. Like because the appeal of Monkey Ball is its simplicity, but they just like can't get it right. Like
it gets so ridiculous.
Yes.
It gets so impossible. It's like, what do you want me to? You want me to flip the stage?
I think
to fly off of this thing
that
and
stuff
then
is awesome.
Land on a rail and
it's like, when Damiani does the impossible just because he thinks it's like amusing, you have to do that kind of stuff in Monkey Ball.
Yes.
You have to be Damiani to even get 70% through the campaign.
Going back to the kind of central question in the email, where it's like, what game made you realize like, oh, I really like this, and it's maybe not something you think about all that much. Ace Combat 7 was like, oh yeah, like dogfighting games can be awesome. They just barely exist. Like there aren't that many opportunities to kind of participate in this genre, and it used to be a lot more prevalent. Like I remember I think it was this F-16 game on Genesis that I would just play over and over again. And it's like, oh, this is so much fun. And Ace Combat 7 is so good that you're just like, yeah, there should definitely be more of these games.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience with Ace Combat 7, where it's not a genre that I look at and is like, oh, I'm really excited to play this. Like even like Star Wars Squadrons, that's on PlayStation Plus. And like, okay, I'll download it. I'm not sure when I'm going to check it out.
It's so good.
Yeah, and I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like I loved going through that Ace Combat 7 campaign. It's just something about it. Like just seeing that it exists doesn't like spark me that way.
You need to, yes.
Once
I'm
I
the
sit
same
down,
way.
there
Yes.
it is. Yeah.
Yes.
It's neat for Pokemon Snap, new Pokemon Snap, to come out right before E3 and for us to get like 3 or 4 cool photography games. There's one that's on Steam that's black and white. I can't remember. Everything's 2D, and so you have this really small environment, so you kind of get right in the middle of, and then you can rotate around and look, and weird little things happening. And the game that Maravilla Island,
Island, yeah.
So it's neat to have like a celebration of photography, because I was playing Pokemon Snap, and it's just like, oh right, I've been doing this for so long. Ever since I've been capturing game footage, I always try to get like a cool shot. So it's neat that I'm being rewarded finally beyond just sweet montages. And so that was a thing. Yeah. I forgot it was probably Pokemon that got me into it. I mean, even stuff like Metal Gear Solid, you're scanning and
you could
taking photos and Dead Rising and
Pilot Wing 64
Pilot
did
Wings,
it.
Fatal Frame.
Man,
give me Pilot Wings.
The ghost concept in Metal Gear Solid is so cool, where you can take photos at specific points and it'll be like a weird ghost of somebody. And just steal more ideas, game developers. That's what I'm saying. All right, we've got one last email. This episode has gone by quick. From Son of Sparta. This is another email that I picked. Definitely have you in mind, Brandon.
Haha.
I was the last minute ad.
Step aside, please. Yes,
no, I didn't mean that as an insult. I just saw this and I'm like, oh, Brandon will appreciate that. So he says, hello, Ben and Allies. I hope you're having a great day. Inspired by Huber and Brad, I was recently making a list of all the games I've beaten. And when it came to the God of War series, I was reminded of God of War Ascension. Even though the final game was one of the weaker entries in the series, I remember really loving its live-action trailer at the time, so I decided to watch the trailer again, which is called From Ashes, and challenge my memory of it. I'm glad to say that 8 years later, this trailer still makes me emotional. The song, the scenery, everything is just so well done. I think I can comfortably say that this is my favorite live-action trailer for a video game. So I was wondering, what is your favorite live-action trailer for a game?
Technically, it's live action because they did shoot it with a camera, but it doesn't seem like live action because it's kind of stop motion-y. But that Halo spot,
that was the first thing my brain went to.
It was so cool because it's like, good. There's probably better trailers, but like that's a thing that they built.
Yeah, and the music
for a video game.
Yeah,
just like whoa, and also poo-poo that trailer because that never happens in the game. It's not referencing anything. It's just that it's clearly some marketing
appropriate.
It's some marketing team on Mars just like having a blast. But I remember that was just like way above and beyond. The Smash Brothers for 64 where they're all in the park and they all beat the crap out of each other.
Yeah, that one's very good. There's a Japanese trailer for, I think it's A Link to the Past, where they're like all dressed up as
dancing.
Yes, they're dancing. Yes, that one's very, very good.
Yeah.
It's a weird, but also from the Smash Brothers era, maybe even the same marketing team, who knows? But the battle tanks with the Snuggles bear.
Yes, I do remember that. Yeah, that's good. I'm struggling to think of live action trailers.
There's a lot of TV spots.
I know when we done Trailer Jones, we definitely had come across quite a few of them.
They're rarely good.
Are there any
but
recent
there are
ones
some,
that
because
really
there are some good ones though.
Because I feel like we've kind of gotten away from the live action trailers.
Well, because you have like live action games. I'm trying to think of the guy. What is his name? The guy who did Telling Lies and then he did
Sam Barlow.
Yeah, he's it's I think you expect well this is live action, then you're going to be bringing in some like top tier talent because his casts keep getting more and more expensive, and so it's same thing with like CD-ROM type stuff. It's just that
did Destiny do any live action spots? It feels like something they might have done.
I think they did some of that stuff, but they're all masks. So it wasn't like any specific actors. And some stuff too, like I would say Lance Reddick, is that his name? The guy who was in Horizon.
Yeah.
That looked like live action. Like that one shot of him in the first trailer we got.
Don't forget all the weird Sony ads.
Oh, and all
for the PS3.
The PS3 and the PS4,
everything blowing up.
Everybody in the bar and stuff.
Oh, and sorry, the Call of Duty's done a lot of really fun live action spots. I remember there was one with like Kobe, and like everybody it was just like some like lady in like a dress and an apron or like a bazooka, and then she was fighting, and then like at the end there was like some guy. It was like some chef at some restaurant who had like two Uzis and he like blows up everything behind him.
Maybe I need to go back and rewatch them because maybe they're like more fun than I remember. But I always got the feeling from those Call of Duty live action trailers where it's like, it feels like you're making a trailer with like references and humor that was like in vogue 3 years ago. Like you just weirdly missed the window on this. I don't know.
Yeah. That's the thing is I think you're swinging for the fences so hard every time you do live action, and so when it doesn't play, oof.
Yeah.
It's not going to make me interested.
Definitely.
Definitely an old era. And I recall From Ashes, and it made me think of this because you brought up trailers, I didn't. I always felt bad back in the day when we would give out awards for trailers or do like trailers for the year, because half of those would be trailers for games we've already played, and the other half we hadn't. And it's like, well, there's always a difference.
Yes.
And
definitely.
I remember kind of bringing that distinction up when we did top 100 trailers back at Game Trailers. We were all just like, who cares? Trailers that we like, but it's interesting having played a game and then you go back at something and sometimes it's even better.
Yes, definitely.
There was one Last of Us Part 2 trailer that was like,
whoa. Or you go back and watch the Resident Evil trailers and like, oh, they spoiled everything.
Yeah. Still a powerful trailer.
Somehow they put the end of this game in these trailers.
Well, that's going to be the end of this episode of Frame Trap. Thank you so much to my panelists, Brandon Jones and Daniel Bloodworth. This was a ton of fun. If you would like to send an email in to Frame Trap, the address is askeasyallies@gmail.com. One more time, that is askeasyallies@gmail.com. And thank you so much for watching.